We are on air.
All right. I call the 2,336th meeting of the Milwaukie City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted by video conference. The public has been invited to watch the meeting on the city's YouTube channel, Comcast Cable Channel 30 in city limits, or by logging into the Zoom video conference as an attendee. The public may submit comments in writing by email to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. There will be opportunities for the public to give oral testimony during today's meeting. When it's time to take public comment, staff will monitor the email inbox, the Zoom participant list, and the Zoom chat to see if anyone would like to speak. We will take comments in the order they are received and seen. Spanish translation services are available upon request. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. Contamos con servicio de traducción al español cuando sea solicitado. Se pide al público que solicite servicios de traducción y otros servicios de accesibilidad para reuniones por lo menos 48 horas antes de la reunión. Translation services are also available in other languages. The public is asked to request translation and other meeting accessibility services at least 48 hours before the meeting. If we are unable to continue the meeting, council will briefly meet off air to move unfinished business to the next council agenda. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The city of Milwaukie respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya, etc. Treaty with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. We know that Elk Rock Island was a particularly important place for the indigenous folk that lived around this area. And that will be one of the items we're discussing tonight, and the sort of general upkeep and where that's going. Announcements. Don't forget to attend the final Porch Fest concert event this Friday, May 21st. To find a map of performance locations, visit milwaukeeporchfest.com. The next First Friday poetry reading, hang on. The next First Friday poetry reading and open mic is on Friday, June 4th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Featured readers are members of the Eugene Poetry Group. The open mic follows the reading. Email Tom Hogan to register and receive a Zoom link to attend. The city's annual bulky waste collection event returns on second and third Saturdays in June. Milwaukee's garbage and recycling collectors offer this curbside pickup for large bulky items that do not fit into weekly collection containers. Please be sure to check the event webpage to find your collection date, which will either be June 12th or 19th. The page is located at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov/bulky waste. For more information about each of these events and others, please visit the city's homepage, where you will find the city calendar at milwaukeeoregon.gov. If you don't have access to the internet, please call the city's general number at 503-786-7555, and staff will provide you with the information you need or connect you with someone who can help. Yes, Lisa.
I'd also like to add an event that this Saturday from 10 to noon, the Milwaukie Museum is having a work party to spruce up their grounds and their landscaping. They've already planted a bunch of new plants over the winter, but they are preparing to open their doors in June, I believe, and they're wanting to get everything looking nice. So if anybody wants to come out and help clean up the grounds of the Milwaukie Museum at 3737 Southeast Adams between 10 and noon on Saturday, I'm sure they would appreciate your help.
Thank you. All right, our next item is the Milwaukie High School Outstanding Student Award, which will be presented by our Milwaukie High School principal, Carmen Gelman. And we have a basketball player with an impending basketball game. So we need to do this with alacrity tonight.
Yep, because we're about to get a win, right, Curtis?
Yes, ma'am, of course.
So anyway, we're very excited about getting to have basketball season and getting to play in our new gym that was remodeled, and we have a great new floor, and it's pretty cool. So I'm super excited to be presenting Curtis Lee to you all. He's telling Curtis about his award was probably the most rewarding thing for me all year. He felt like so honored, and it was so exciting. And the whole admin team was in here because we wanted to celebrate with him. We all felt like that he deserved this award. So I'm very excited to share a little bit about Curtis with you. And Curtis, I'm going to read you some things that teachers and staff members said about you, and then I'll give this to you. But first I want to start out with Miss Dawn Griggs. She says that in the last 4 years, I've seen you overcome adversity and make changes in your life that express who you truly are. Sometimes change can be scary, but it's life's way of moving you on to the next level. It has been a joy to watch you develop your gifts and talents, not only academically, but also athletically. You are kind, funny, respectful, focused, hardworking, and humble. Stay balanced, strong, and positively motivated to attract a constant flow of positive abundance into your life. Choose to spend time on the things that really matter, and know that everything you will need will come to you in perfect time. Ms. Saldivar says, so many things to say about Curtis. When Curtis first started, he was taking his time to go to class, wasn't really interested, and would find any excuse to leave class. But now Curtis has become such a role model for others. He brightens up the room as soon as he walks in. He's so positive, smart, respectful, and has an amazing sense of humor. It has been such an honor seeing you become such an amazing person/man, Curtis, with such a bright future. Miss Nancy is so proud of you. Miss Holly Green says that I'm so proud of Curtis and all his growth he has shown over the last 4 years. I'm happy that his hard work and perseverance are being recognized. He deserves it. Nice work, Curtis. Miss Weather says that Curtis Lee always brightens my day. He is honest, funny, kind, helpful, and cares deeply about others. Curtis spreads joy wherever he goes. He has dug into his academic success with determination and excellence this year. I can't wait to see how Curtis will change the world and continue to be a source of strength for those close to him. He deserves this honor, and I couldn't be more proud of him. I've got a couple more. There were a lot that came in for Curtis, so... Life is about distance traveled. When I met Curtis, he was distant and really didn't interact with me much. Curtis could not hide his generous and compassionate spirit, though. Knowing Curtis since he was a sophomore, I'm especially proud to see the social growth he has made to become an emotional leader on the court and in my classroom. It's not an exaggeration to say that my program runs smoother because Curtis has been a positive role model with his peers. I am most excited about Curtis expressing interest in his pursuing education after high school and wanting to do work that not only keeps him involved in the world of sports, but allows him to continue to give back with his own unique skills. It has been my honor to guide Curtis through the time of profound growth, and I am counting on him to stay in touch with his successes as he goes out to represent the Mustang community. That's from Mr. Murphy. And then your coach, Mr. Law, has known you from the age of 7 to 17. Not only has Curtis doubled in size, he has also doubled in maturity and the ability to have adult interactions and conversations with so many people. Curtis travels through our entire school and everybody knows him and all the adults welcome him in. And so he definitely sits down and have combos with us, and it's awesome. I am pleased to watch the growth that Curtis has and where he goes from here. Fortunately, I've had the luxury in watching him grow over the years, and I hear him talking about the next steps post-high school, and that's heartwarming. Curtis, you are still in the race and finish strong, Mr. Law. And then I've got one more, and that's from Mr. Freeland. Freeland says that Curtis has always been charismatic and appreciated by the staff and the students at MHS. And one of the places his charisma and joy shined brightly was as an elementary mentor at Linwood Elementary School. Curtis was a leader amongst the elementary mentors in playground games, rallying peers and younger students to play together. He had an easy grace and humor with his mentees who loved competing with him. Curtis was one of the most consistent mentors in the program, so Linwood students could always count on him to create fun at recess. I could see Curtis continuing to utilize his skills with youth as a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a community leader, and expect he will continue to grow, challenge himself, and give back to his community. Thank you, Curtis, for all of your work with the younger students in Milwaukie. We are proud of you. And I just want to say that I am so grateful for you. And you are the perfect example of why I get into this work, Curtis. You make my day, you brighten my day every time I see you. It doesn't matter where it is, whether it's on the court, in the hallway, waiting in line to get into the building. As you know, I always run out there when I see you and your buddies, and I'm like, hey, because you make me happy. And just getting to know you since I've been here, I just absolutely adore you. You're awesome. I'm so excited about where you are today. And I'm really grateful that I've gotten to know you. I think we all feel that way. I know that everybody just absolutely adores you. And it's because of all of your hard work and how you treat other people. And that's what makes us adore you, is you make us laugh, you're caring. Curtis got us, before we went into lockdown, it was Christmas, he got us these little head scratchers he's just really thoughtful and caring. And so I'm super excited about where you go next, and just so grateful to have you in my life.
First off, I just want to say I thank you for picking me. I thank everyone for making the meeting. And I just thank the whole staff and everybody at Milwaukie. And without Milwaukie, I probably wouldn't have been able to graduate this year. If I'm being honest, without the staff member this year, without my brother, my family, none of this will happen. And just words can't explain how excited or happy. I'm still shocked that I'm still in the month after all the 4 years of me just being lazy, not wanting to do the work, not wanting to go to class, and just actually growing up. It makes me just so happy and just so excited. But for who I really do it for, I do it for these two right here. And I got my little niece right here. That's who, and I got the other two at home. That's who I really do it for, because I'm their next role model for them to look up to. And I know if I kept doing what I was doing, then they would follow that way. And I don't want that to happen. So I had to change my ways for them. Not for myself, well, for myself, but also mainly for them.
Congratulations, Curtis. I'd be careful putting that label on yourself as lazy. I wouldn't do that. You just needed time to find your path, and you found it. I do have one question. Who's your game most resemble?
Basketball-wise?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Russell. I can finish at the rim, make plays. I can shoot a little bit, but
So you're a scorer?
Yeah. Scorer, right. Combo guard.
All right. Well, good luck tonight, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Curtis, you sound like such an incredibly well-rounded individual, and it's always so fun to meet the people that Principal Gelman brings to us. And, as I was listening to all of the qualities that people really see in you, and hearing your story of transformation, I was thinking how much we need leadership like you in city governments and government everywhere too. So, I think physical therapy is wonderful, and it has been life-changing for me to have good physical therapists, and I know that's something you're interested in. But as you're thinking about how to make a difference in the world, I hope you also think about service in government at different levels, because you've got a lot of what it takes, and you'd be an amazing advocate for youth in particular. So thank you for the opportunity to meet you, and good luck tonight.
Thank you. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
I mean, I'll jump in and second all those things that have been said. I think especially it really touched me that you're inspired by the next generation, and so I do think that says a lot about your leadership and your devotion. So thank you for that. I had never heard about this elementary mentor program. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Elementary mentor is mainly run by Mr. Freeland, Mr. Church, and which is the counselor. And he does, like, before COVID, he would only let juniors and seniors and some sophomore who he really thought was mature to do it. And I've been signed up for it since freshman year. I'm kind of happy that I didn't take it freshman year and got a chance to take it sophomore year, because then I actually got time to interact and see how actually kids are dealing with my nieces and nephew. So I actually get to see how kids are, and I know how to understand them. Because freshman year, I probably would have got mad and or frustrated and just who knows. But knowing that I know how to deal with kids now, and knowing like what's fun for them to play with, and like how to stop them from fighting each other, arguing with each other and stuff. It's just like, it's a fun class. It's pretty easy, and you get a nice little workout in for the day.
Okay. Well, best of luck at the game tonight, and best of luck with your life after high school. We look forward to hearing what you decide to do.
Thank you.
Hi, Curtis. Yeah, good luck tonight. Go Mustangs. I was excited to see, I was interested to hear about your interest in physical therapy, and what you're thinking about just in terms of, schools, because I'll give my husband's school a plug, and I usually do when the opportunity comes up. But Pacific University, which is just 25, 30 miles to the west of us, has an excellent physical therapy program. And Division III sports is a great way to pursue academics and continue playing sports. So if you love basketball, or if maybe you're a multi-sport athlete, that's a good option. And I'm sure that there are lots of other programs in the country too, but that's one that I'm familiar with. So are you considering schools in the area, or are you looking sort of everywhere?
I'm looking kind of everywhere. I'm looking at one in Michigan, one in Auburn, Washington, but right now I'm still undecided.
Well, wherever you go, I wish you luck. And I just want to say that I'm really struck by your self-reflection. I just really appreciate, that ability to sort of look internally and really sort of evaluate, and adjust and make changes, where you've seen that you needed to. And I think more people, not enough people do that. So that's really awesome. You're an excellent role model for your nieces and nephews and the kiddos that you mentor, but us too. So thank you for being a part of our community, and for having the opportunity to know you for just a few minutes. But
thank you.
Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, you sound like somebody that is the kind of person we need in leadership, whether it's as Kathy was saying, in government or in education, the kind of person that really truly relates to people and finds the goodness and finds the way to interact with them that works for them. That's a soft, they call those soft skills. I don't know why they're soft, because most people never get that. It's a pretty critical piece to being effective and having a great career at whatever you do. So you've figured that out at a really early age. So I think you can go on and do whatever you want, but I do think that that's a skill set that is desperately needed in leadership roles and dealing with folks. So I do hope you will consider that. I'm super excited that you are the student this month, and I hope you have a great game tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. Scott.
Michigan.
Sorry?
What school in Michigan?
It's called Finlandia.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
in like Hancock, Michigan or something.
All right.
Scott, can you put up the,
Yep.
I don't have it. Come on. Sorry, technical difficulties. All right, the City of Milwaukie is proud to recognize for outstanding student achievement in academics, civic engagement, and extracurricular activities at Milwaukie High School, Curtis D. Cola Lee. Let it be known to all that on this 18th day of May 2021, the City Council of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, recognize this student as an excellent example of the bright future of this community and nation.
Yay.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, we really appreciate you being with us tonight. We hope you have a great game. Pre-COVID, we used to do a quick picture. I would do a quick picture with each student and their plaque. If you want to do that after this is all over, reach out. I'll be happy to do it.
I will, for sure.
Cool.
Thank
Have
you.
a great game.
You too. Or, nah, you too, but thank you.
All right. Now, are we getting an update from Principal Gelman? She disappeared. That's why I'm asking. Is she going back to her office?
I believe so. She had a video to share.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Just 1 second. Let me make sure he gets out. All right. Okay. You want to shut that door? All right. Thank you, honey. Okay, I'm gonna present a short video. Although, Scott, you don't want to do it?
I can. Do you want me to give it a go?
Yeah, because it takes me a minute to try to figure out. I usually do Google Meets.
Okay.
So,
I'm making sure mine's loading too. Okay, I've got it.
so this is just like a 1 minute video on our first day of school, just so you can see kids coming back into the community.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Cool.
So that was just a video, because I get really excited when our kids are here. So that video totally excited me, since we've had an empty building all year. So seeing our students in classes, and we had 800 kids show up. So I think we had the highest number district wide. And I think one of the things that we did was we went through the list of any students that didn't fill out surveys, and I put a team together. And so they called every single kid on that list to make sure, well, you guys know, because of the student from last month who said, call. And so we had all these kids show up, and I've talked to several of them, and they're just so glad to be back. Just to have that interaction and just be back at school, and I think are feeling pretty good. So things have been, I think they're getting smoother every day. It was a little rough in the beginning, just figuring out how to teach in hybrid, but also you have kids that are coming in on the computer while you're teaching kids in person. So teachers are having to do both, take attendance for both, teach both. And it was overwhelming at first. So, but they're figuring it out. They're getting their groove. They do what they do best, because they're excellent teachers. And it took about a week, but they've got it now, and they're getting that. I just love my staff. It's the best teaching staff, not just teachers, but classified staff as well, that I've ever had in any building. So I don't know that I could have gone through these last 3 years with another group of people, but this is just such a fine group of folks. And what stressed them out the most was not being able to give their kids everything they want to give them. That's when they get stressed out, is when they worry about the kids, and it just means a lot. So other than that, graduation, we were going to do it on the football field. I'm hearing that might change. So that's been kind of like the year. So we already have all these plans. We had a senior meeting yesterday. We've got all this going on. We were going to have 2 graduations on the football field. That may change. We'll be meeting this week. I think we might be moving to a big arena so that kids can bring more family members and all of that. So that's exciting. So we'll hear what happens there. But that's about it. Not a ton going on, just trying to finish out the year and all those details about graduation, trying to see if we could do a dance. Basketball season, winter sports started yesterday. So it's kind of gone backwards. We just finished our spring sports season. Our baseball team had, it was the first winning season since 2012. So they did really well, and I'm really excited. And then now we have winter sports. And so that's going to go by pretty quickly. It's a lot of evenings, but it's really fun. We get to be inside with our kiddos and watch those games. And so super excited about that. It's the one time I really get to be out with kids a lot of times is during events. So, but that's about it.
Are they allowing spectators?
They are. You can bring in, I think it's 150 spectators. So everybody, we have to have a certain number of folks that can come in. Any other questions?
I meant to ask last time when you said that number, I was curious because I don't know what the total enrollment is at Milwaukie High School. You said it was over 800 attended, and it sounds like that's huge, right?
That is. It's about 11. We're at about 1150, but we also have some that decided to go into VOP, about 50 of them, and VOP is the online schooling. And once you decided to make that decision, then you're in there for the year. So yeah, it's a pretty big chunk of students that came back to us.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, we do this thing called the Youth Truth Survey that we do every year to figure out about engagement or how our kids are feeling. And a lot of different other questions that we asked. And I was really nervous to look at it because obviously we've been in CDL for a year. And so I'm like, and then I was very thrilled today to find out we've gone up in almost every category. So, and that's student voice, family voice, and staff voice. Yeah, I was super excited. I was shocked just because of all the complexities. But I think, We work really hard to make sure that we communicate with all of our families, and we have engagement teams at every grade level. So we go through every single kid's grade with a counselor, my dean, the engagement specialist. We look at what classes they have, how they're doing academically with attendance and all of that. And then we have a group of folks that call any students that we have concerns with and try to get support. So we have a pretty good system dialed in. Obviously when we went into CDL, I had classified staff that were doing things that they weren't going to have to do because we're in CDL. And so we shifted their roles. And so they got placed on teams. They made phone calls. I mean, they have stepped up and have done so much to support our students and families. We deliver things. The staff is incredible. They delivered school supplies or science kits or just all kinds of stuff that we wanted to make sure kids had.
And are the kids who are coming back to school, are they in full day or is it a half day or no?
It's a half day. It's 12:30 to 3:30. And it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And on Wednesdays, we have a CNC class in the morning online, which is Community Connections. And that's where we do a lot of our equity work. And we do, our student government puts a video together. The staff, does car karaoke. We do all kinds of stuff. But anyway, the CNC lesson is really about like social and emotional supports. And they have pretty meaningful and deep conversations around equity and different things that are coming up for kids. So, and then Thursday and Friday, they come in for half the day. So they do their other classes in the morning. So the teachers teach 2 classes in the morning, then they drive over to the school or they're here already. Then they teach 2 classes in the afternoon. It's a lot.
As if teaching wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
Teachers don't get the kind of, they do so much. They wear so many hats. They're expected to be teachers and mentors and therapists and, just all of those, guardian, like they're expected to do a lot and then differentiate with lots of different students and kiddos that we have and meet the needs of all students and all learners. And it's just, I think where they feel the most reward is what happens with students, because it could be a pretty thankless job if you think about what teachers get paid and just all of it. And I don't think people really understand the workload of a teacher. They're my heroes.
You're preaching.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are we going to see
right.
you next month, Principal Gelman?
Sure. One more month.
No pressure.
Is that a Tuesday as the 17th?
I'll leave that to Scott to answer. He's looking thoughtful.
Yeah, we'll talk. So the 18th is the last. So the 18th is the last day of school. No, it's not the 17th. It's the 15th.
Or 14th. June 1st is a Tuesday. So it might be 8 or 15. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So graduation's on the 15th. So we'll probably have to look for another day. But how about you and I communicate, Scott?
Yep.
Awesome.
Good plan. Thank you so much. That was awesome as usual.
Thank you. All right. Well, it's really nice to see you all. I'm going off to a basketball game.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is the Dogwood Day Proclamation, which will be presented by our city recorder, Scott Stoffer, our Milwaukie Historical Society, Greg Keemer, and the Daughters of the American Revolution, Phyllis Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, and happy pre-Dogwood Day to everyone. We've got a little bit of a presentation, as you might be familiar with now, and I'll just say it's a privilege for me and for the staff here to work with our partners at the Historical Society and at the Daughters of the American Revolution to do so much to support our community and remember our civic traditions, such as Dogwood Day. which is, as for those who don't know, is our annual celebration of the day our city was incorporated, and also a reminder that the dogwood is an emblem of our connection to this place, which is Milwaukie and the earth. And we'll touch on those themes. So I'm going to launch a PowerPoint, and I will turn it over to Greg.
So yes, happy Dogwood Day to everybody. And I have been spending this last weekend pulling out my Dogwood Day decorations from my garage. So I hope everybody else gets those and gets your Dogwood Day decorations out on your front porch. So thank you.
What do those look like, Greg?
They are flowers. They look like flowers. Milwaukie Historical Society, owners and operators of the world's largest museum dedicated to Milwaukee's history, located at 3737 Southeast Adams Street and open Saturdays 1 to 5 p.m. when county COVID restrictions are at or below moderate levels. Along with our partners, DAR, are proud to represent Dogwood Day 2021 Proclamation this evening. Slide. Milwaukie Historical Society is looking forward to seeing our guests again after a long year-and-a-half closure. Our guests will experience enhanced and improved displays of artifacts in our 3 galleries and be able to see our newest panel celebrating and remembering the year 2020 in Milwaukie. Slide. Also with our partners, City of Milwaukie, Willamette Falls Studios, Leading Library, in June, we'll be telecasting our 3rd Lending Library lecture series. This time, we'll have an informal conversation between former Representative Carolyn Tomei and our first female governor, Barbara Roberts. It will be a wonderful experience of remembrance of Governor Roberts' terms in office, how she began her career, and what she has been doing since her retirement. Look for it on YouTube, Milwaukie Heritage Channel, and Willamette Falls Studios airing schedule. Slide. Our beloved dogwood is the symbol for our city. Most of you know the story of Mrs. Schindler taking care and nurturing what would become the largest Pacific dogwood tree in America. In the past, I have visualized the parts of the tree to segments of Milwaukie. As Ben Franklin said, without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. In the same vein, I have learned that it is not up to me to determine what the symbol should mean to everyone, but express what others may visualize us to what the symbol means to them. Slide. Some may see the symbol as humans' dominance over Mother Nature, how humans have used our rich natural resources for shelter, food, and warmth, allowing our species to live in any conditions. They see the concrete, buildings, automobiles, computers, and all the inventions that make life easier for a triumph and celebrating the dawn of the Anthropocene period and what more revelations it will make. Some may see the symbol of humans' interference and destruction of the biodome, overpopulation, pollution, and human invasion. The symbol may represent what is lost, like species, habitat, and pillage of the lands, and it may show the hubris and conceit of humans have against the natural order. Slide. Some may envision the symbol as Mayberry. When traffic was light, downtown was a place to be, and as children, they could ride their bicycles through fields and play on the logs in the bay. They remember a simpler time when everyone knew their neighbors, and they met at Derringer's or Jim's barbershop to discuss the politics of the day. Some may envision the symbol as growing and progressive city, growing and thriving, building infrastructure and dwellings so all can use the roads and with many types of housing choices. It sees 5-story buildings dominating the landscape, creating a better atmosphere for all choosing to reside here. Slide. Some may comprehend the symbol as a city of opportunity, a place to buy a home, work hard, raise a family, and prosper. A symbol of the American dream where prospects are high, and by being diligent and taking advantage of chances, doors are open and the sky is the limit. Others may comprehend the symbol of oppression and being left out, where the opportunities of many may have been lost to them because of bigotry, systematic racism, and intentional coloring of the law. The symbol may be closed doors and limited opportunities because of the color of their skin, their gender, their sexual preference, or the language they speak. Slide. Some may imagine the symbol as old and stagnant. New leaders with new promises, but with the same crummy results. The symbol represents to them that even new promises of better horizons, nothing ever changes unless wondering if the tide will ever turn. The symbol is left with only celebrating their past, resting on their laurels, and unwilling to change. Others may imagine the symbol as leadership that not only brings excitement, but produces wins time after time after time. Leadership is celebrated even though it changes, and the promises of continuous success is always accomplished. It creates championships and creates an atmosphere of results, not just promised, but realized. Slide. Some may picture the symbol as the great protector of our well-being, creating codes, laws, and regulations that encompass all residents and keep us safe and shield us from the mistakes made in the past. They may picture the symbol as trusting without bias and secure our hopes and dreams. Others may picture the symbol as overreaching bureaucracy that hinders them from making choices about their lives. They picture the symbol as barrier to freedoms and desires they have to accomplish great things or create such an expense to their dreams that it cannot be achievable. To them, the symbol squashes ingenuity, entrepreneurship, and opportunities. Slide. Even though an individual may visualize, see, envision, comprehend, imagine, or picture the symbol as different things, we can all at least agree it is a symbol for something. As long as a symbol is willing to listen to all points of view, to all voices, regardless of skin color, language, gender, sexual preference, or political affiliation, it allows itself to communicate open and honestly without bias and hidden intentions. And it provides excellent customer service. And as long as the symbol reciprocates and responds to the needs of those who view the symbol will remain strong and vigilant to all eyes that gaze upon it. Thank you.
All right. Phyllis, did you have something?
Yep. Greg, Phyllis.
My name is Phyllis Hines. I'm the regent of the Susanna Lee Barlow chapter of DAR. The missions of the Daughters of the American Revolution are to promote historic preservation, education, and patriotism. May is Historic Preservation Month. In an Oregonian article from Sunday, October 8th, 1920 is this statement: "It is the desire of the National Society that every chapter collect data relative to its vicinity, and if not otherwise marked, to memorialize them by sending perfected records." The intent was to create and dedicate historic markers. The first marker dedicated by the Susanna Lee Barlow chapter in 1922 was the Johnson Creek marker in Milwaukie, Oregon, which was named for Reverend William Johnson. On April 27th, 1952, the Susanna Lee Barlow chapter presented and dedicated the marker named Dogwood Tree at Niedermeyer Home. The marker reads, "Dogwood Tree, the native Pacific dogwood over 100 years old, the largest in the United States. Height, 65 feet. Circumference, 7 feet. Susanna Lee Barlow chapter, DAR, April 27th, 1952. Participating in the dedication ceremony held at 2 p.m. at the Niedermeyer residence on Harrison Street were Mrs. W.B. Penwarden, Mrs. Howard Arnest, Chapter Regent Mrs. R.B. Shook, Mrs. D.J. Schenk, Mrs. Fred Rector, Mrs. Henry Niedermeyer, and speaker Dean Collins of the Oregon Journal. A local Cub Scout troop also participated in this program. The Susanna Lee Barlow chapter of DAR is proud to be in partnership with the City of Milwaukie on the celebration of Dogwood Days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg and Phyllis. And I gave one away. Forgot the next slide. One of the ways we've celebrated Dogwood Days in the last few years is with an Instagram photo contest. And so tonight we're proud to announce who the winners are. This year we had 15 submissions. If you follow the hashtag Milwaukie Dogwood on Instagram, they sometimes get over to Twitter and Facebook as well. But we had 15 to look at, and the Dogwood committee got together, and there were a number of really good, outstanding submissions, and we are pleased to pick a couple of them. So here are this year's winner of the Instagram photo contest. The first winner, we selected 2 winners this year. The first submitted a series of 6 photos, but the handle for the first winner is The Stones Speak, as you see there on their screen. A series of 6 photos, and they kind of follow this theme of the white dogwood lily flower with the ring and the hand. And so here's the primary one, and then a couple more. And then finally, this series of photos. So congratulations, and thank you for participating to The Stones Speak. And then the other one was Ruthie Moo, who submitted this beautiful pink dogwood in the foreground. You can see the petals there, and then the pink dogwood in the background. We did reach out to them, and from what I'm told from Jordan, they were very excited and very appreciative to be nominated or selected. I can't see if they're here. I didn't see the names that I thought were associated with them. So to our winners, thank you for participating. We'll be in contact with you about picking up your award this year. It's a framed version of I forgot to grab it from my office, but there's a framed version of the Dogwood Day poster that we've had out the past couple of years. And so, Mr. Mayor, with that, I would, I'll leave my screen up here since it has the proclamation, but Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind reading the proclamation.
Whereas the Pacific dogwood, Cornus natali, was nurtured and cultivated by the earliest settlers in the Milwaukie area, including the Clackamas people who used the dogwood to weave baskets and make other utensils. And whereas the Oregon State Legislature incorporated the town of Milwaukie on May 21st, 1903, after years of organized community action that sought to seek local control of the area's infrastructure and shared spaces. And whereas on April 27th, 1952, a plaque was placed by the Susanna Lee Barlow chapters of the Daughters of the American Revolution at the home of Milwaukee's first mayor, William Schindler, to mark the location of the then largest native Pacific dogwood in the United States, which stood at 65 feet in height and 7 feet in circumference. And whereas on July 9, 1962, after an organized community effort, the City Council adopted Resolution 25-1962, designating the Pacific dogwood as the city's official flower and the Dogwood City of the West as the city's nickname. And whereas the people of Milwaukie continue to find great appreciation for the Pacific dogwood and other variations of the species by planting dogwoods in yards, parks, and shared spaces across the city. And whereas by designating May 21st as Dogwood City, this city continues to recognize the beauty of the dogwood blossom as an emblem of our shared commitment to the earth and to each other as the Milwaukie community. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the county of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim May 21st, 2021 to be Dogwood Day in Milwaukie, the Dogwood City of the West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and happy Dogwood Day. It's this Friday.
Happy Dogwood Day. Thank you, Greg and Phyllis. All right, our next item is the Historic Preservation Month proclamation, and this will be presented by Councilor Beatty and the Milwaukie Historical Society, Greg Keemer.
So I'll just say, I'll just kick it over to Greg to start us off. I think he has another PowerPoint. And I may want to say a few words at the end before you read the proclamation.
I just want everybody to know that Councilor Nicodemus, it is very rare that I get to put in a Michigan, Ohio State version into my slides. So I thought I'd share that with you.
Stagnant.
However you want to label it, right? It's not up to me to how you're going to view the symbol, right? So thank you for letting us do Preservation Month proclamation for 2021. So, every time that Scott does that, I got to do this. Okay. Milwaukie Historical Society, owners and operators of Milwaukie Museum, located at 3737 Southeast Adams Street, open Saturdays 1 to 5, as long as county COVID levels are moderate or below, are proud to present tonight's proclamation for Preservation Month. Slide. During 2019, Milwaukie Historical Society was able to showcase 4 homes during our Island Station NDA home tour. It was a rousing success, not only showing the interest of fellow residents in home preservation, but also the willingness of historic homeowners to showcase their beautiful properties and their pride in displaying their hard work and dedication. We were prepared for 2020 Lake Road Historic NDA home tour, but we all remembered what happened. We are now preparing for the 2020 Lake Road Historic NDA home tour, featuring Hager's Pond and the Strebe House as our main attractions. Slide. We all know that preservation itself needs dedicated individuals whom value the resources they are handed. Milwaukie Museum has countless files and items dedicated to our historic past. We preserve these items not only for our enjoyment, but for future generations that may not understand the significance of struggles we all endured. For example, most of us actually had to push buttons or turn a dial on a phone attached to a cord to call someone and hope they were home, or have to call them back again and again until we finally reached them. Today, children do not even have a concept of how hard making a telephone call was, even though they may ask, why didn't you just text instead? Slide. In fact, we as residents of Milwaukie can contribute to either preserving, modifying, or demolishing Old City Hall. Please visit the city website and answer the survey on Engage Milwaukie. It asks you to rate the importance of these major goals set by the City Hall Blue Ribbon Committee. Historic preservation, which means a project that maintains the historic character, defining features of the exterior of the building facade. Character-defining features include visual aspects and physical features that contribute to the uniqueness of the historic resource. Character-defining features of the exterior of the building could include the overall shape of the building, its materials, craftsmanship, as well as decorative details, among other features. Creates a destination, a project that is an anchor for downtown Milwaukie, a destination that attracts both local residents and regional visitors. Maintains open space, a project that maintains green spaces and or trees on the property. Sustainable practices, a project that uses sustainable and energy efficient design and construction methods. And minority women business enterprise contracting, a project team that will make a good faith effort to utilize minority women businesses, enterprises, in contracting. Slide. Preservation takes many forms, but Oregon Comprehensive Plan requires a historic inventory of all homes over 50 years old. With almost 6,300 homes over the age of 50 years old, it seems overwhelming. Here in Milwaukie, it may seem like a daunting task, but Milwaukie Historical Society is willing to assist. We can offer assistance in photographing, researching, addressing, identifying, and evaluating certain properties. We have experts and people willing to learn to identify what is significant, historic, or just plain unworthy. We are here to help City of Milwaukie cross off many of the duties needed to accomplish our comp plan ideals. Slide. We should also begin to celebrate our mid-century modern houses. Most of us think about Frank Lloyd Wright as mid-century architecture, but in reality, it is simply this. Form is the function, or simply put, the age of the patio. We have many examples of these homes in Milwaukie, from the typical T111 four-sided to the extreme of Frank Lloyd Wright styled inspired homes. Most are in between. The preservation of these homes is important to remembering our past, our attitudes, and after World War II, our commitment to the American dream of a little patch of grass and owning our own piece of property. Slide. Milwaukie Historical Society values our preservation not only in the form of houses, but its own collection of artifacts and stories. Today, if we commit ourselves to preserving the utmost important structures and artifacts of our past, then in the future, we will not have to explain a rotary phone, but just show them one. Now, Mayor, if you could please read the proclamation.
I'd like to just chime in with a few words before he does. I appreciate the offer from the museum to help with the historic properties inventory. I think that's a very generous offer, and I am hopeful that our Design and Landmarks Committee is able to take up that work soon. They have been on somewhat of a hiatus, but I think they're supposed to be wrapping up their work on the downtown design guidelines, and hopefully this has been on their work plan for a while, and hopefully they'll be able to take it up soon. So I appreciate that offer from the museum. That's great, because it is a heavy lift. I do think there's a lot of, it's been 40 years or more since we looked at the historic inventory, so it will probably be a heavy lift. And I appreciate the great photos you shared of, some of the examples of what we have to preserve here in Milwaukie. And I look forward to your 2022 home tour. I was lucky enough to be one of the hosts of the 2019 home tour, and it was great fun. I think the homeowners enjoyed doing it just as much as the people enjoyed viewing the homes. So I look forward to that returning in 2022. And I guess with that, Mr. Mayor, the proclamation, please.
Whereas the preservation of historic places is an effective tool for revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas since 1973, the National Trust for Historic Preservation and countless other communities across the United States have marked May as an annual time to reflect on the importance of preserving places that reflect America's history. And whereas modern-day Milwaukie, situated in the historic homeland of the Clackamas people, was established in 1847 and incorporated in 1903, the city boundaries encompass a range of potentially historic buildings, including late pioneer-era structures and exceptional mid-century architecture. And whereas residents of Milwaukie and many volunteers of the Milwaukie Historical Society have helped raise awareness of historical resources and buildings in our community, including by launching the first historic homes tour in 2019. And whereas the preservation of historic places has a positive impact on communities by strengthening neighborhoods, encouraging local economic growth, providing a physical link to the past, and by being environmentally responsible. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, the mayor of the city of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the county of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Historic Preservation Month in Milwaukie to increase public understanding of the importance of preserving our history for future generations. All right. Thank you again, Greg. Next up, we have another proclamation, And this is the Public Works Week proclamation and be presented by our Public Works Director, Peter Passarelli.
Thank you, Mayor Gamba, Council President Heise, and council members. I am Peter Passarelli, the Public Works Director for the City of Milwaukee, and I'm here tonight to introduce the 61st Annual National Public Works Week, which is celebrated between the 16th and the 22nd of May. You know, the past year's really been a challenging one for all of us, but, you know, our Public Works team has worked tirelessly to operate and maintain our city's public infrastructure through a pandemic, regional wildfires, an ice storm, rain, ice, smoke, or shine. Our Public Works crews provided essential services to the community. The team continuously plans to ensure a resilient future, preparing for the coming threats of climate change and the potential impacts of other natural hazards. Their hard work allows the Milwaukie community to feel confident that there's a plan in place for the functionality, longevity of Milwaukee's critical utility infrastructure in the best and worst of times. The many divisions of Public Works are essential to a healthy and functioning city. Public Works' hard-working staff maintains infrastructure critical to urban living. The team ensures community members can move safely through our city streets, clearing the roads after winter storms. Our Public Works staff provides community members with clean drinking water, working days, and sometimes nights, so that every Milwaukie resident and business can turn on the tap and know that their water is safe and clean. The team maintains systems so waste leaves their home in a clean and sustainable way. Our Public Works staff ensures that our community meeting locations and city facilities are lit, comfortable, and ready to be utilized. The team also ensures that the city's both public safety and Public Works fleets are ready for the road at all times. The Public Works crews also serve another essential role for the city as stewards of our natural resources and educators for our climate preparedness and community resiliency. Through detailed stormwater management, Public Works staff work to protect our waterways, riparian areas, and encourage sustainable practices in community members, businesses, and industries. Through our urban forest management plan, Public Works works to grow our urban canopy, and the natural resource staff tirelessly plants the right trees in the right location to help spread the benefits of a healthy urban forest. The implementation of our climate action plan, the most progressive in the region, starts in our Public Works department and extends to all the other city departments and community partners. Public Works takes every effort to lead by example for community climate action by preparing resilient utility systems, cutting fleet and facility carbon emissions, and promoting natural systems that mitigate some of our climate change's effects. Our staff engage with community members on climate education. They lobby for progressive energy policy and legislation and develop outreach strategies to promote our council and city's climate goals. From maintaining our utilities infrastructure to climate action, Public Works provides critical services to Milwaukie, but it's a work gladly done out of love, dedication, and commitment to a healthy, thriving Milwaukie community. Thank you, Mayor Gamba. If you could read the proclamation.
I will do that. I would just like to add that a lot of people take what you and your crew do for granted. They turn on the tap and water, nice, clean, clear, delicious, cold water comes out. They use the toilet and it goes away, and they need to get to someplace and there's a nice street or a sidewalk out front for them to use. All of those things require somebody to do that work. Whether the weather is good or the weather is ugly, whether there's a pandemic going on or not, your crews are out there working. And I think it's really important that we celebrate this because they truly are some of the unsung heroes of modern civilization, frankly.
And the city put up a story map, if people haven't seen it, on the water system. And I imagine Peter's responsible for that. It's really great. And it's on Facebook and I imagine other social media. And I definitely recommend that to people to sort of understand the water system and what's involved in bringing that clean water to your tap.
And
there's a great picture of the Public Works crew that opens up the story map. So you get an idea of just how many people are really out there working on behalf of the city's residents.
And I think we'll also be introducing several other story maps this week. So there's one on the water, one on the wastewater, stormwater, and a climate action story map as well.
Mayor, just one more thing, because this is my one chance. This year was hard, and I just wanted to thank a couple of people as we talk about that. The team worked seamlessly throughout the entire pandemic, and it would not have happened without Renelle, Shane, Damien, and Peter at the lead. They really did an exceptional job of figuring out how to keep our staff safe and able to produce and keep our water system safe and keep the systems moving. We did not have any transfer of COVID in his team, which is pretty shocking when you think about how closely they have to work together and how much time they have to spend together. I just appreciate that our team was so serious about COVID that they kept themselves safe and they kept each other safe, and that they took care of everything that had to happen over the last 18 months, and that they had such a great leading team. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
All right. Whereas public works services are important to health, safety, and well-being of Milwaukie citizens, and whereas these services are provided through dedicated public works professionals who oversee water distribution, water treatment, wastewater treatment, sewer systems, urban forests, equipment services, public properties, solid waste systems, city streets, and water utilities. And whereas 2021 marks the 61st annual National Public Works Week, and this year's theme is Stronger Together. Now, therefore, I, Mark Gamba, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas and State of Oregon, do hereby proclaim May 16 through 22, 2021 as Public Works Week in Milwaukie. Thank you, Peter, and thank your team for us.
I will do that. Thank you.
All right. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear community members' statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak, please raise your hand or indicate you wish to speak. Before you make your comments, please state your name and city of residence for the record. If you would like the city to follow up with you, please submit your contact information to ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov. As council has other business items on the agenda this evening, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because information provided during the community comments may be new, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. Before we begin, is there follow-up from the May 4th community comments, Ms. Over?
There are not.
Scott, do we have anybody?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see any hands raised or emails. I think I see Mark Hughes in the attendees section, and I know he's interested, or they're interested in speaking during the Elk Rock Island part, so you may want to wait for that, but I see no other hands raised or any comments in the chat.
Okay, so yeah, let's make sure that we open up for comment during that section. If I forget, please remind me. All right, tonight's consent agenda includes the minutes of the City Council on April 20th, 2021 work session, April 20th, 2021 regular session, and April 27th, 2021 special session. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Yeah.
Has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard or seen. Passes unanimously. Sparrow Site Goals and Adoption of a Resolution. This will be presented by our Development Project Manager, Allison Wicks.
Good evening. I'll share my screen here. There we go. All right. So good evening, Mayor Gamba, councilors. My name is Allison Wicks. I'm the Development Project Manager for the City of Milwaukie, and I'm here tonight to present on the Sparrow Street site. Tonight, I'm going to ask council to consider a resolution to approve project goals for the Sparrow Street site, and I'll also share some information about the affordable housing ecosystem and the need for affordable housing in Clackamas County and in Milwaukie. And then I also, Katie Ray from the Wichita Center has also plans on joining us. So I know Scott is looking for her, and so we'll see if she
She's there.
Okay, great. So I'll present and then have maybe Katie give some comments at the end. So as a recap, I've shared a handful of updates about the Sparrow Street project in 2021. So in January, council received an update on the project, kind of dusting things off after the year that was 2020, and discussed project goals at that meeting. And then in March 2021, council reviewed goals. I presented at the neighborhood, the Island Station NDA meeting. And then from January through April, I've been meeting with and talking with affordable housing providers and also hearing feedback on our goals. So at the April 2021 meeting, council heard feedback both from the Island Station group and from affordable housing providers, and we discussed revised goals at that time. So now we're back in now it's May 2021, and we have a resolution for you all to consider to set goals for this project. So as a reminder, the Sparrow Street site is located in the Island Station neighborhood. It's in the half-mile station area of both the Park Avenue station and the Main Street station of the Orange Line MAX. The city of Milwaukie purchased the site in 2019 for the purpose of bringing affordable housing to the city. And it's about 1 acre of developable land. This is an overview of our project timeline. We're currently in the property disposition phase of the project. So council is currently reviewing project goals. Once those goals are set, the next step in the disposition process will be a public hearing, declaring the property surplus and authorizing a request for qualifications. As far as site design, the real bulk of that will get underway once a development partner is on board, but the site access study is near completion, and we'll share information about that at our next council meeting. So I was also asked to share a little bit of information about the housing ecosystem and the need for all types of affordable housing in Clackamas County and in Milwaukie. So this is a diagram. It's from the Habitat for Humanity website, and it shows kind of the spectrum of housing types in the housing ecosystem. So this ranges from people experiencing homelessness up to market value home purchases. Emergency shelter services are typically short-term. Transitional housing is temporary lodging that's set up to transition residents into more permanent, affordable housing. Kind of both transitional and community housing typically has wraparound social support services. An example of social or community housing is a single room occupancy and other types of subsidized housing. And then up to affordable rental and affordable ownership, which is kind of where we've been talking about the Sparrow Street site, and then on to different types of market rate housing. There is a great need for affordable housing of all kinds in Clackamas County and in Milwaukie. The Housing Authority of Clackamas County states that there's about 1,500 households on the wait list for affordable housing. Councilor Falconer shared some additional information that this is likely an undercount, and that there's every time the wait list opens, there's a huge amount of demand for these spots on the wait list. The Portland State Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative reported that in 2017, there were almost 6,000 people in Clackamas County experiencing homelessness. The need for affordable rental units in Clackamas County over the next 20 years, this is from the local implementation strategy, is estimated at over 10,000 units. And in Milwaukie, that need is estimated at about 700 units. And that ranges across kind of all types of low-income housing. In the 2019-2020 school year, in North Clackamas School District, there was reported 331 homeless youth, or about 2% of the entire enrollment. And I have a little more detail on the youth who are experiencing homelessness last school year. And so that was 33 were in shelters, 260 were doubled up, 18 were unsheltered, and 20 were living in motels or hotels. And Katie Ray can certainly share more about the work that she does with students and families. I also wanted to remind Council of the information I shared last month about the Sparrow sites and kind of limitations based on affordable housing financing. So for incomes, this is a lot of what I've heard while talking to affordable housing providers and developers. So income restricted rental units, it's really challenging to finance those 0 to 30% AMI projects that are smaller than 50 units because it's hard to compete with low-income housing tax credit financing with much larger projects. And for those 0 to 30% AMI units, it's best to have on-site resident services, and 45 units is the low end that it makes sense to have on-site services. And those 0 to 30% units have less long-term operating income. So developers really like to, affordable housing developers like to pair those 0 to 30% units with at least up to 60% units so that the project itself has more ongoing income and can sustain itself year after year. For income restricted home ownership units, kind of a typical project would have a mix of up to 60% AMI, and then also some units at 60 to 80% AMI, so serving a little higher income range. And those home ownership units will often recruit from income restricted housing buildings. So kind of thinking about that housing ecosystem, it frees up a spot for a family in a affordable rental project from one of those other transitional forms of housing. So at the request of Council, I did have our planning team do kind of a very preliminary look at different development scenarios under our current and future zoning. And what we learned is that the site will yield significantly fewer than that 40 to 55 units that is preferred for a project that would be solely 0 to 30% AMI. So this is why the goal was adjusted up to include 60% AMI units. If council wanted to be inclusive of even more types of affordable units, you could further adjust this goal up to 80% AMI. So the next two slides I have are just a overview of the goals as they're written in the resolution. The only one with edits from our last meeting is goal number 1. So affordable housing. So it's currently has now been revised to affordable housing, income restricted rental units, or affordable home ownership opportunities that serve households earning 60% or less of AMI, preference for a project that serves lower income and 0 to 30% households. The other goals are the same as they were last reviewed, and those are unit size, minority women business enterprise contracting, preservation of tree canopy, sustainable design, affirmative outreach, minimizing City of Milwaukie financing, and project delivery. So with that, this is kind of a reminder of the action for tonight. So we can I can either take questions or we can have invite Katie to speak and then do questions after that.
Let's have Katie speak. That way you're both available for the questions.
Great.
Welcome, Katie. Thank you for coming back to us.
Hi, thank you for having me again. It's nice to reconnect with all of you and see the work that you're doing in this area. And thank you, Allison, for inviting me. So I can just give you a quick overview of what we're doing and maybe a look at the data that we have for this year and touch on what Allison had mentioned our data was for last year. So just real quick, I'm Katie and I work at the Wichita Center. I'm the McKinney-Vento liaison. So it's my job to identify and provide resources and services to students in our school district who are experiencing homelessness. I wanted to just kind of give you a brief overview of like what resources we provide and what we do with our students. And again, like look at the data that we have for the last 2 years. So resources we provide, the most commonly accessed and useful service that we're able to provide is connection to school. So if a student is enrolled in our school district, loses their housing for various reasons, in a typical year when we're in school in person, and this year as well as we've started up hybrid school, we work with the family and the students to provide transportation resources to them based on their, age appropriate and distance appropriate resources for transportation so that the students are able to stay connected to their school and they won't have to transfer if they're experiencing multiple housing losses. We also provide, and I know a lot of you are probably familiar with what we have at Wichita, which is access to basic resources for pretty much every family in our school district who needs them. You don't have to necessarily be experiencing a housing crisis to access those resources, but we do have food pantry on site. We have school supplies for our students, a clothes closet for our students, and hygiene items as well that we're giving out. That model has changed a little bit with the COVID restrictions and protocols this year, but we have been open consistently over the last year and been able to serve our school population with the COVID precautions in place as well. Another thing that we do is when we identify or refer a student or family who's experiencing a housing crisis, we work with that family and local service providers to make sure that they're connected to any housing resources that might be available. We work pretty closely with groups like Northwest Housing Alternatives to make sure if there's like an opening in their family shelter that we have, we're connecting with them to make sure if we have a family that needs that opening or is able to access that we're making that connection. And then we also connect with the county's resources. So beyond just Milwaukie, the Milwaukie area, our coordinated housing access program through Clackamas County. So we make sure that the families that are in need of housing resources are able to access that, which can require like some follow-up and like a warm handoff in terms of making sure that they're actually connecting and getting intakes for other services that might be available beyond just like the Northwest Housing Alternatives model. And we also have, so on my team, it's myself, and then we have 2 other student and family advocates who work with me. So we each have a caseload of students. We kind of have our school district divided by feeder system. So we each work directly with students and families in each feeder. And we do have students who are mostly in our high school population, sometimes middle school population as well, who are experiencing a housing crisis, but are also on their own. So they're not in the custody of their parents or legal guardians. So we do tend to work a little more closely with them just to make sure, that they're moving towards graduation or academic goals, that they're accessing school resources, they're staying connected to their school. And if they have goals outside of school, like getting a job, that we're helping them do things like get a copy of their birth certificate or IDs or other things that are needed to make that happen, and also helping them apply for resources. So that would be like SNAP benefit applications, Oregon Health Plan applications. We do have some new youth housing providers in Clackamas County as well, who have kind of this year piloted a youth housing track. So we have our coordinated housing program that you might be familiar with, that's more for like parents and adults to call into, but there's now a youth system for youth under the age of 24. So it's much more tailored to like their needs and much more responsive in that way. So we also work with that program to make sure if we have a student who's completely without housing or getting kicked out of their house or basically comes to us and doesn't have anywhere to go, that we're able to connect them to that resource. And then as far as the data goes, I just want to touch on the fact that so we connect with students and families all year. So we're constantly identifying new families that might be in need. And, we have obviously people who are maybe housed up until April or May, and then they have a housing crisis towards the end of the school year. So we're constantly like adding to that total number of students. And just this year and last year have really been skewed because of COVID. So last year, I think around March, when we had to kind of transition into a work from home model and students weren't in school in person, that really affected the amount of students that we were able to identify. And then this year has kind of been the same. So our numbers are lower than what they typically would be.
Do you think that had anything to do with the moratoriums?
I do, yeah. I mean, one of the main reasons that people lose housing is due to eviction. So there are people who are being evicted still outside of just like non-payment of rent issues, but it's nowhere near the numbers that you would normally see for eviction. And also people who I think are, realizing they might be behind like 6 months in rent, and it's just, they know that they're not going to be able to catch up, or they don't feel like they're able to catch up. So they're making like alternative plans and kind of trying to do what they can to avoid having an eviction on their record, but also like leaving that housing situation.
Can you be sure to let them know that there are several programs, but Milwaukie has a program ourselves for people that are citizens of Milwaukie who are in that situation, that very situation where they know they're not going to be able to make up the rent. We have funds for them. So we don't want them to lose their housing. There's also a federal program, and there's theoretically state money as well. I can't tell you much about either of those programs, but there for sure is ours. So please, please don't let anybody end up on the street who can access that money.
Sure, yeah, definitely. It's a good reminder. Thank you.
And also assistance for utilities. The city has a program for that as well.
Great. So I'm not sure if, I don't know how much time you wanted me to talk for. So if there's questions now, or if you want me to kind of go into more detail about anything, I don't know.
I have a few questions for you, but go ahead. Not the Heisey, go.
Thanks. I'll make it quick. I just had a question that I'm not sure you can answer, Katie, but thank you for the information. It's always good to have more context, and you're one of the people who can provide us that in a better detailed way than anyone. When we're thinking about how to best use this resource that we have of land and to use it to benefit families and folks who are experiencing houselessness and families that have that. I keep wondering, what income level are we really talking about? Because we really focused on the 0 to 30% level very early on in our conversation, which is a very small amount of money. I think we're around $64,000 is the average income for Milwaukie. So that's, 12 or 13,000. And now we're talking about 60%. I'm wondering if you have any sort of sense of at what level of income people are still experiencing a need to have their kids double up or to send them elsewhere or experiencing some form of houselessness.
That is a really good question. And Allison and I kind of talked this over a little bit too when we met, I think last week or the week before. And I think my overall take was that like anything that's going to be added to the housing portfolio, targeting, like the lowest income and middle income people is going to provide relief and assistance in some way. And I personally don't, from my experience, I don't know if, I think it's good to have a slight variety. So if you have a housing project that has the opportunity to have certain units that are set aside for that 0 to 30%, but also have the option of, someone who might have a Section 8 voucher already being able to use that in an existing unit, and maybe having some fluctuating AMIs for some of the, I don't know how many units might be available or what it will end up looking like. But I think it's good to have a range, because there really is a range of need in all of those kind of lower AMI, like 50 and below, probably even 60, I think would be really helpful. And I don't have the information. It's been a long time since I've looked at like how, those percentages, what that actually reflects in terms of salary and income. But I know it can just change significantly if you've got kids and you're like a 4-person household who's, maybe not meeting the threshold for like something like daycare assistance or, other resources that are income-based that people tend to kind of just price themselves out of just barely. And those people also really struggle.
Yeah, and I have been wondering, just looking at some of the feedback we've gotten from housing developers about whether or not we even need to think about going up to 80% AMI just to make a project feasible, because we aren't going to have the number of units that most of these developers that do this work really are looking for. We can't promise that. So, and I want to do something that absolutely benefits these folks that most need it. But I also know that we need to put something out there that is actually achievable for the people who develop these projects and do the long-term maintenance and support work to make them really successful in the long run, because I think that's important to us too. I don't want to one and done it. I want it to be something that continues to support families, for decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on going even higher than that or not, going from doing the 60 to 80% AMI.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, again, of like how the income breaks down along those lines, but I do think that it's good to be open to that option, because you're always going to find families that there's just such a wide variety of needs and a wide variety of situations and income that can be calculated in some weird way, or maybe someone technically has 80%, but they're actually having something garnished, or, it's just not, it's not always gonna, I don't know if like fit into that kind of package, I guess.
Thanks.
That was pretty much my question too. Wanted to get a sense of if we, let's just for as an example, if we split the project between, half of the units being 30 to 60 and half of the units being 0 to 30, are there families that are experiencing homelessness in North Clackamas School District that would fill all of those spots? And as you've said, you don't know it's a lot more than you would kind of think, right? Even 30% for a single person of the AMI is, that's kind of a minimum wage job.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you add a kid or two or three, all of a sudden they can be making significantly more than minimum wage and still be in that range.
Yeah. I mean, I think we see everything from a single parent with multiple children who is surviving off of TANF, and, a multi-parent household who they might both be working and have other barriers to obtaining housing that don't necessarily reflect maybe even in their income. They might be doing pretty well in terms of like getting a new job or starting something that's going to be lucrative, but they've got maybe a charge in their record that they haven't been able to get expunged, or a past rental or credit history. It might be more of the barrier, in which case, that higher AMI might be helpful for them as well.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And when Allison and I discussed this, we talked a little bit about Section 8 voucher holders too, and just having that option to maybe, again, I have no idea what the funding is going to look like. And I know it's super complicated working with different government sources and things, but having that option to have someone bring their voucher in is always helpful to add to that kind of rental pool as well.
Right. Yeah. I know a lot of people end up finally getting the voucher and then they can't find a place to rent. So,
yeah. Or a place that they feel safe, or, is somewhere besides some of our like larger complexes that they might have already been coming from and, not been successful there or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, I don't have questions, but I do have thoughts when you're ready to deliberate.
Okay. All right. Well, can you hang out for a little bit longer in case somebody comes up with a question during deliberation? Awesome. Thanks, Katie. All right, cool. Thank you. Go ahead, Lisa. You're muted.
I don't know if you're taking public comment and where that falls in there here, but I mean, I'll go ahead and.
I guess that's a good question. Scott, is there anybody waiting to comment on this one?
To my knowledge, Mr. Mayor, everybody wants to speak on Elk Rock Island. If anybody does want to speak, as the mayor said earlier, please raise your hand or put a comment in the chat or email ocr@milwaukieoregon.gov.
Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
So the staff report, and reinforced by some of the conversation tonight, got me thinking about the language that we're putting in a preference for, 0 to 30. We're going to have 500 units or whatever it is at Hillside. I don't know what all ranges they're going to cover, but they're not going to be ownership potential, is my understanding. We're going to have some units in Coho. Again, they're not going to be ownership potential. Other places we might use some of our CET funding to secure units. The way things are going in this town, most of those are, apartments and not going to be ownership potential. And it seems to me this is a site where we really have an opportunity to do something that has ownership potential, to sort of help people become homeowners. And so I kind of think that should be our priority, as opposed to reaching the 0 to 30s. And I also think that doing that, might end up being a sort of a townhome model. And that's also a good thing to have happen vis-a-vis our comp plan, our new zoning, which will allow for townhomes. And it'll be, in some ways it could be sort of a demonstration project about townhomes. So, I mean, I kind of would like to see us prioritize it as home ownership, which does mean, probably at least 0 to 60 and probably to 80% of AMI.
Oh, it's more than, it's at least Habitat for Humanity. You have to be, I think it's 80% to get into those homes. Does anybody remember for sure? It's at least 60.
Well, when I talked to Proud Ground, who partners with Habitat, they've done projects where some of the units are actually serving families who are at 40% AMI. So there are homeownership opportunities even in the lower income ranges. So I'm definitely not interested in going up to 80. I think, I'll just go ahead if that's okay, Mark. We don't own very many properties. We certainly haven't land banked very many. And so we don't have very many opportunities to serve our most vulnerable and neediest families. This is an opportunity. We bought it for practically nothing for this purpose. We have an asset that we can leverage, unlike any other asset we have in this city. We don't own other properties that we can determine, make these kinds of determinations with. I think that there are other opportunities around the city. I'd love to see us embark on a really robust land banking program. We don't have that right now. So we've got very limited opportunities that we, the city, we actually control what happens there. So, I don't think that we're necessarily precluding a Proud Ground or, a Habitat with the existing affordable housing goal as it's stated. I don't think that we're necessarily telling those potential developers that you're not welcome. We're not interested in hearing from you. Don't apply. But I do think that we are opening the door for some more creative thinking for that deeply affordable need, because we know it's there. And, I think it's really important that we provide, at least the opportunity to see what is out there. And, if it's a mix, if it's home ownership opportunity, great. If it's rentals, to provide shelter, stable housing for those 18 kids who are currently unsheltered, even better.
Yeah.
So, Angela, it sounds like you may have information that is different from the staff report, and I would love to know what else you know, because when I've been reading staff reports on this topic, I'm hearing we're not going to have the number of units that's necessary to make 0 to 30% work. And I would love to do that. I want to be very clear. I would love to be able to serve that population. So it's not a lack of interest in that. I'm reacting to the data I have, and I want to make a project work on that site. So that's my interest in exploring the possibility of going up to 80. It's not because I feel like that's necessary for housing purposes, other than I'm concerned that we will put an RFQ out there and we're not going to get any interest from developers, or we'll have one option and it's not something we like, so that's what you're hearing from me. It's not a lack of interest in serving the lower income populations at all. It's an interest in making a project work. So if you know more, I would love to know.
I have a conversation with a woman at Proud Ground. That's all I have. So okay. I have to take what she told me as as valid and true. And if they're able to house people at the 0 to 40, then I have to believe her.
Do you have any more information on the project that she's referring to?
I can reach out to her and ask. I'm not going, that to me doesn't hold up this. I don't think that our stating we have a preference for that threshold, like I said, I don't think that precludes others from applying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way I read the packet, I don't think anybody's saying they can't do any 0 to 30. They're just saying they can't do 100% 0 to 30. I think that's what's being said. And I think there's a lot of, I think Northwest Housing Alternatives does projects that are mixed incomes, and would probably, given how close they are, this would be pretty ideal for them.
Well, and that's the question mark, right? Is a few blocks, like, is across 99 close enough to count as on-site services? And maybe it is, and hopefully we'll hear from Northwest Housing Alternatives.
Yeah, I asked that question before, and by some people I was told, no, it's not. But the point is, they have families come through those shelters and they try and move them into something that's more permanent. And this would be kind of perfect, right? It would be a system where they come into the shelter, they get them stabilized, they get them jobs, they get them all the things that they need to then be successful. And then there's housing that they can move them to, or at least a certain number of them. To me, and Desi and Katie are going to be able to speak to this far better than I am. But when a kid is in a situation where his family or her family is homeless, their odds of success diminish rapidly. When they're changing schools 3 times a year and they're being, living out of a car or whatever they're doing, it's brutal. So to try and make the lives of however many we can do, if it's 30 units and that means 60 kids or 70 kids that aren't in that situation, that's huge to me. So
I still have not heard anywhere in this conversation or in any previous conversations that we would not be helping that very same population if we went as high as 60 to 80%. And again, I'm still interested in serving the same population that you are talking about, Mayor, that you are talking about, Councilor Falconer. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what range do we need? Because generally speaking, it seems like when you put out an RFQ that has a little more latitude and flexibility, you get more creativity. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there an argument to be made for offering the possibility in that first part of the resolution for some percentage, and it could be a very small percentage, up to 20% being the 60 to 80, to make it pencil?
My attitude is we take it out the way it is. If we don't get any, any requests, any proposals that fit our needs, then we tweak it and we go out again. There's nothing stopping us from saying, nope, none of that works. We're going out again.
Is that, can you give a sense of how that affects staff time, Allison or Kelly? Like, does putting an RFQ out multiple times take more time? Does it make sense for us to get it as close to right the first time, or does it not really matter?
I will give my shot and then let Allison reply. I think it probably is more of just a schedule, kind of hitting that expediency component of the goals is probably more my concern. Like, you want to I know there's a lot of interest in getting this done and moving, right? And take into, to Councilor Falconer's point, and to everyone's point, we know there's a need. We know we have this site and this urgency to go. So I think it probably, I'm not saying it certainly would create workload for Allison to take it back out again, no doubt. I think probably the bigger risk is just that, to me, that I see is that schedule slipping. Okay, so then we bring it back, we send it back out again, and it just further delays it. So that is real. I think I've been talking about it in all my expertise that I've developed on this topic in the past 2 weeks. It's the menu. If you go up to 80, you may get something you like in there. You don't mean to take it, but you might get something that you like. So the risk is that you hear about something and you can't act on it because it's outside of the 60, I think, is probably the bigger risk. But Allison worked really hard on this. We talked a lot about it. We put 60 in because we felt like that's where you all were, and we wanted this exact conversation that you're having. So thank you. I'll take it and we'll go with it and do the best we can. And if we need to do it again, we'll do it again. I just think it pushes out the delivery timeline. Allison, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, what I've been trying to communicate in the different staff reports is that I think we've made the right choice of moving away from like a solely 0 to 30% projects. I don't think we would get responses. By moving up to 60, it's like those 60% units, the income from them offsets the 30% units. So that's kind of another possibility. If you're going up to 80, you might even see more 30% units because the project just has a more diverse level of incomes, and you can see, kind of a broader range of units or more income on the 80% end that then offsets additional 30% units. It might be the difference of 1 or 2 or 3 units, but that's 1 or 2 or 3 families.
Something that's coming up for me, and I'm all for affordable housing, but what systems are in place that are keeping people in these AMIs, right? I mean, it seems to me that it's going to be a cycle, and we need to figure out what systems are in place and what barriers we need to break down that people aren't rotating in and rotating out, and there's such a big need for affordable housing. So, I mean, that could be a discussion for a later time, but I think we really need to look at what systems are keeping people down and what needs to change.
I totally agree, and it's exactly why I spent the last year doing what I spent the last year doing. We set a minimum wage for city employees at $15 an hour. That is literally all of the power we have to change the minimum wage. I do firmly believe that minimum wage is a big part of it. The minimum wage in the Portland metro region should probably be something more like 22, 25 bucks an hour. When you do that, you push all the other wages up, and now you have more people who aren't living hand to mouth all the time, and therefore are in deep trouble if they have a medical emergency, and they probably don't have insurance either unless they're just poor enough to qualify for the Oregon Health Plan, right? So those are the things, right? Those are the two, in my mind, the two biggest things that we could change as a society is to increase the minimum wage and have universal health care. If we did those two things, I believe we would start to solve a lot of the problems. Now, then there's mental health care, drug addiction care. Those things have been ignored for 30, 40 years. But I don't know at the city level what we can do to affect those. I know that we can provide some housing.
Well, and I think that that's also where it may be that providing home ownership opportunities is something we consider, because that for the people who have that can break that cycle, because then you're providing a way to build equity and build savings, because that's the, when you get crushed by never having enough money, then you never have the chance to get out of that cycle of poverty. And I know you've seen that with your students and families over and over again. I don't know if that's, we have to see what the RFQs bring back and whether or not it's something we want and makes sense. But to me, that's one of the appeals of creating that home ownership opportunity in a development. But again, we have to see what the proposals we get back are and whether or not it ultimately fits with our goals.
Yeah, I would second everything Kathy just said. And actually, that goes back exactly to why I think we should prioritize, we should say home ownership has a preference rather than 0 to 30 has a preference. It may mean fewer units, but I do think it's more life-changing for the people who get those units. I have a question that I guess is a Justin question, or maybe it's a Kelly and Allison question, which is, so if we stick with a reach version of the goals and go out with an RFQ, and we get one or two responses, and maybe they marginally meet it, but we don't think they're great. Are we stuck with going with one of those two, or can we go back out?
I just saw Allison say we don't have to keep it.
No, it's not like a bid. It's not like a low bid situation.
It's my understanding that under this process, we're not they're not putting a significant amount of money into developing a program that in order to respond. They're coming up with a proposal to give us for us to consider. So it's a little bit different from something where you put together a bid package where you're saying, hey, here I am. This is what you get. This is more kind of a test drive process. A little bit looser.
We'd have language in the request for qualifications just saying City of Milwaukee's not required to move forward with any proposal that comes in.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the way it's written, it allows for a proposal that's home ownership, and I would certainly entertain it, but I'd have to get convinced that the folks they're going to be able to do that with are the people coming out of the shelter at Northwest Housing Alternatives or some other pipeline that affects people who are in homelessness, because that is the goal, is to get school kids housed in a stable place. And whether it's rental or ownership, to the kids, it's probably not going to make a giant difference. To the adults, it will. But to the kids, it probably won't make a giant difference. Certainly not in the short term. So I know Lisa would like to change the wording to prefer home ownership. Are you there, Kathy? Are you wanting to change the wording to prefer home ownership?
No, but I did hear things in this conversation that made me wonder about creating a little more flexibility. I wonder if maybe it should be 0 to 40% to reflect some of what Councillor Falconer learned from Proud Ground. And I'm also, as long as we're good with it maybe taking longer because we have to go back out to RFQ, I'm fine with leaving it as is. Just knowing that I have those concerns that we may not get proposals that really hit the mark for us. So I'm fine.
Could I offer maybe something to meet, to kind of meet us both where we're both concerned? Would it be possible to add, something that says basically what you said, if we would consider 60 to 80 or up to 80 if it guarantees some units of 0 to 30. Would you?
Yeah.
How do others feel about that?
I mean, I'm okay with a little bit of flexibility in the language. I think it just needs to be clear what our goal is, and that was an issue that I had with it. And I understand all the fair housing laws that are designed to screw poor people. But to the degree possible, I want these people making proposals to understand what we're trying to achieve here, that we're trying to get homeless school kids housed. And beyond that, we're very flexible.
Yeah, my understanding is that basically the signal there is that we're requiring these to be 2 and 3 bedroom units. That's
Sure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be homeless school kids from North Bycombe School District.
well, they'll be they will it almost guarantees that they will be families with children. I mean, that everyone I've talked to has said, if you're looking at, if your project, if the request is for 2 and 3 bedrooms, you're talking family units with children. It's not going to be a bunch of college kids who need a house, need an apartment to share.
Right. And since it came up earlier, I think I know the answer to this, but is there any kind of housing that anybody is doing that targets those kids who are by themselves, who have lost, for whatever reason, they don't have a family anymore? Is there anything out there that anybody is aware of?
Bridge Meadows is doing that right now.
Well, we're getting a Bridge Meadows. Last time I spoke to Dorinda and Rich Swift, we're getting a Bridge Meadows up at Hillside.
Cool. It's the Dorothy Lemelson house, I think. Is that right? Isn't that the one that's students? Is that right? Yeah.
So. I mean, there are various programs for housing solo kids. There's the one that came and spoke to us from the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. There's I would imagine through Outside In and some of those places, there are other programs.
Right, but those are more relational, like setting those kids up to be with a family that already has a house, and it's not building infrastructure to create a space for those kids. That's what I'm asking about.
It's the one I'm just referring to. It opened in 2018. It's got studios and 5-bedroom or 1-bedroom apartments, and it's for 17 to 24-year-olds who've aged out of the foster system.
There's also a program called Dev Northwest. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but they work through the youth continuum that I had mentioned, and they lease apartments with landlords and place youth in them, and they provide other services as well.
Okay. So all right. Thank you. So how does everybody else feel about some flexibility in the language like Angel suggested? That's why I see one thumb, one head nod.
I still think it should be the preference for home ownership. So that didn't solve my concern. But I mean, I realize I'm not gonna carry the day on that.
Is there language in there that says that home ownership is a factor that we would be?
It says income restricted rental units or affordable home ownership opportunities that serve households, blah, blah, blah.
There you go. So
it doesn't say preference for.
Right.
I would say preference for.
Okay. As long as it's clear that it's available. So go recruit.
I think we actually need you to adopt a resolution. So are we able to pull that up now? I'm sorry, Counselor. I didn't hear.
To it, I believe. Not just this one, but I think there were some other edits as well.
Yep.
Yeah, well, let's see. Can you pull up the last version, Allison?
Yes.
As an alternative, Allison, would it help if we put it on consent for the first meeting in June? Are we in a rush to do something sooner than that, or could we do that?
It would be fine, I think, for schedule-wise.
Okay, if y'all wanted to, just to do the cleanup, we could make sure that the language is consistent before you adopt.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we quite have Angel's language captured perfectly. At least I don't have it perfect in my mind, so it'd be good to have that in the resolution.
Okay. We will work on it and then put it on for consent at the next meeting.
Okay. Good
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Could we take a little break?
Sure. 5 minutes? That's sufficient? Okay.
Katie, before we break, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Appreciate you taking the extra time.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And I'm appreciative that this conversation is still happening and that you guys have a lot of motivation behind this project. Take care. Good luck.
Before we break to Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it helps anybody, but we're learning that YouTube is experiencing a playback error, and it's not anything to do with us locally. It's a somewhat far-reaching and sporadic outage of a playback error. So anybody trying to watch on YouTube, I apologize. I don't know what the cause of it is, but it's not born in Milwaukie, I don't think. So we'll continue to record it, and it should be uploaded tomorrow without problem. And still keep trying. I'm still watching it, and it's circling. But anyway, just want to throw out that for anybody watching. YouTube's having issues.
All right. Thanks, Scott. All right. See you all back in 5 minutes.
we're on air.
Okay, welcome back to the regular session of the Milwaukie City Council. Our next item is the Elk Rock Island update, a resolution, and this will be presented by our Assistant City Manager, Kelly Brooks.
Hi, everyone. Peter's going to jump in as needed. He's my tree support person. But before I open up my last PowerPoint of the day, I wanted to just talk about why we're doing this right now. So we have, ever since the city took over ownership of the island, according to our agreement with Portland, are responsible to submit a work plan and an update to Portland. It doesn't go on forever, but we're still in that period. So we normally do that just on consent. We do the work plan, we do the resolution, and it's like a procedural thing so that we can make sure that it's documented. This year, I think because of the fire, which I'll talk more about in a minute, this has been Elk Rock Island is always a well-loved, high interest location anytime. But this year, even more so, right? Because it was put at risk and was closed. And so we've been getting lots of inquiries from different places. Many of those folks are in the attendees and are going to chime in and share the thoughts and concerns that they have about the island. Different requests for meetings and briefings and things like that, which I think some of those are, still be a good idea. But we wanted to kind of at least center it here. Like, this is the time of year we check in on Elk Rock, right? We have this report, we have this standing item. And so pulled it off consent and made it on the regular agenda so that we could have that time and opportunity for people to speak and hear from you. And I think I just want to say there's a lot, and we have two counselors from Island Station who know these issues many ways better than I do. Not everyone's issues are the same. You have some people that are really, concerned, like, hey, are you doing what you need to be doing to be responsible for this island according to the management plan? I think you'll hear other folks that are still saying, hey, too many people, too much traffic. How are we managing this? What's the future look like? Tonight, my objective is I can't solve all those things. I don't have answers to all those things, but I just want to be just terribly, painfully, pragmatically transparent about what we have done. And I don't want to hide anything. I'm an open book. So if you have questions about any of it, I will answer it truthfully and transparently as I can. And I will also tell you that a lot of the content of the staff report, NCPRD has done this report. Peter did the first one. Thanks, Peter. The first year we took the island, that was in Peter's camp. He got it and shipped it over with some, I think, input from NCPRD. But after that, Tanya was kind of spearheading it and sending it to us, and we add to it. So there's a lot of detail and expertise that's in some of those NCPRD items that I'm not going to be able to speak to. But we'll do the best we can. So let's go with my awesome sharing abilities. And I'm now we're about to come back in person, and I now know how to do this.
You got Zoom down.
And now I've got Zoom. Okay. Y'all see this? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give you a quick recap of 2020 and 2021. I've got a very detailed slide at the end specific to IGA terms. I'm going to walk through those. It's a lot of text and pretty boring, but a lot of the folks in the attendees room care a lot about these items. So I just want to walk through them so that you have that information. And at the end of this, I am hoping we can adopt the resolution. But if we can't do that tonight, it's okay. I've shipped this document over to Portland Parks and Rec last week. So they have it. We have more time if you want to do it, but that's the end objective, is just to do that same resolution we do every year. Okay, so 2020, 2021, what were our big issues? spoiler, it's going to be the fire. It's big, is really the big issue, and I'll talk more in detail about that. But I would say, public safety continues to be one of the major things that we hear. And that links directly to the fire. So who's going onto the island? What are they doing on the island? And could that be creating risk and hazard for the island? And so we did have a lot of conversations. I know it's something that comes up anytime that Luke or his staff are at the NDA meetings. Ann and I can't remember, Ann, when we met with Sid, particularly when the island was closed, folks feeling like we didn't have eyes out there. And so was there a potential to be able to add some additional patrols? And so a lot of those conversations. So I think, as it's just an ongoing issue as we've taken over, and it was one of the primary reasons to take over the island, was to have better coordination and at least an understanding of who would respond and, to 911 if you called. I think we have all that figured out now. It is time intensive. So still, I would say probably an unmet need area for folks is around public safety, or feeling that that's an unmet need. Restoration work continued. Most of that, and I'll be real transparent when we get to the costs, this is all staff time. So we're not contracting out with people to come in. It's staff time and volunteers going in and doing work when they can do it. The fire in some ways actually provided a lot of opportunity to do some pretty extensive restoration work in a closed environment, but it is still staff time. And then there were a couple of volunteer and educational events, and those are outlined in the staff report. The fire, it was, about it. Everybody knows. It was September 9th, 2020. The good news is it was controlled pretty quickly, and there was an immediate response. But that was a very scary many hours and traumatic hours for our friends that live near the island. And I think something I've just heard from talking with folks is how that really has stayed with them. So I'll let our neighbors on the council speak to that more directly. But I know that was scary, and it continues to be kind of a source of fear. I think the response to that fire was dramatic and forceful, and resulted in quite a bit of erosion. So that was one of the main things that really had to kind of deal with coming back, is where was the soil destabilized, and how is that going to result in potential tree loss or trees falling? And I want to give a special extra shout out to Peter's team. They really did go out a lot. Julian was out a lot and spent a lot of time and really prioritized saving as many waiting. Waiting, and that was part of the need for the closure, is to see what could bud out in the spring, what could remain. So really high value placed on tree preservation and getting out there quickly when needed to take down a tree and remove it to prevent a hazard. So we had originally said we'd come back and open back up in April. We got it done a little bit early. March 26th, I think, was the day it actually all opened. I will say this is one of the most confusing locations for me in terms of intergovernmental partnership. Just put that out there. It's been hard. This is not in our IGA with North Clackamas. But it is right next to Spring Park, and it has a lot of resource there that aligns well with the Natural Areas program. So there's a lot of work that Insecurity does on the island and volunteer events, because it aligns well with that program, but it doesn't actually align with their contractual responsibilities. With that being said, we worked really well together through this fire. So I do want to just say thanks, that I think everybody put the right view forward and prioritized the right actions and met consistently throughout to identify what we needed to do and to make sure those things happen. And I certainly on the city's part, and we didn't let we did what we needed to do. So this year, as unfortunate as the fire was, a lot of work actually really did occur on the island. And I think it's hopefully a good launching off point for what we do next. So IGA, I am going to spend some time on this crazy wordy slide, but you have it as an attachment. There's been a lot of questions about, do you really spend the money that you were supposed to spend when you took over the island? The identified authorization amount was in that year one. And the way that is addressed, or we're considering it to be addressed, is we did do a contract for, it was a small contract for, I think, $8,000. And then there was, I'll have to pull up that amount. And then the rest of it was Peter's cruise, which I can let him speak to, but there was never I'm giving $32,000, the city's giving $32,000 to NCPRD. There was funds identified for a transfer. And then Peter, when we were thinking, this isn't we don't have an agreement for this, we got to get this work done. Peter used Public Works crews to do the work and then attributed the staff time for that, is my understanding, but I can let him speak to that. So that's that first year. I did have another chart at the back that kind of tallies up year by year. But again, I am definitely talking about staff. NCPRD staff time is most of what that is, and volunteers is the bulk of those dollars. This year, we did have some additional city resource in the terms with respect to police overtime and the tree work that was completed. Full disclosure, I think we're still missing quite a bit. This happened, I compiled some of this post Julian's departure. So I think there is probably some additional work that I didn't capture, but you get the idea. We did amend the UGB. We did that. Yay. We annexed it into the city limits. We have not done the UGMA because we haven't done the UGMA. So we're not going to do a standalone amendment to that boundary. We'll do that when we do the big thing. So we haven't done that yet, but we know it needs to occur. Like I mentioned before, the public safety response and enforcement, definitely still conversations to be had with the neighbors moving forward, but we are providing that service. So that is done. The steps, this is actually, I have to thank Mark Hughes for this one. I didn't know I was supposed to do it. There's steps on the island, and there's a DSL, you have to get them permitted because they are in the water. And that was something that had slipped through the cracks between the transition between the former assistant to the city manager and me. So I do have that in process now. I gave them a draft and I just kind of need to harass them and make sure it's what they need and get it turned back in, but we'll do that and pay for that. The appropriate funds each year as determined reasonably necessary to implement the plan. Like, this is the big question mark that you're going to hear from folks and the attendees tonight. Is the in-kind services enough? Is what we're doing enough to implement the plan? I think the only thing I would say is implement the plans a little, like some more definition there, if we could get it. And I don't entirely know that there was ever a time that the right amount of money was being implemented to fully implement the plan. So I think that's just a question that I have as well. Right now, we're doing it through documenting staff time. That's the way we're deciding that's met for now, and we look forward to feedback from you on that point. We submit annual plans. There was a hiccup in that because I believed for a certain period of time that they were going straight from NCPRD to Portland, but they weren't. And that was just a mix-up in communication. They have actually all been submitted now. So we got that sorted out. I made sure that Portland has them all, and they do have this draft right now. So it's been corrected. There was a date shifted requested by NCPRD at one point to shift it to this time of year from March, just because it fit better with budget reporting purposes, and they were fine with that. I haven't ever gotten any feedback. So just so you know, it feels a little bit like shouting into the wilderness, but we are sending them. So just so you know, even ones that weren't transmitted directly from the city because of a communication lapse on my part are now there. They have them. We have not, we would love if anyone from Portland Parks and Rec wants to come monitor. They're welcome anytime. No concerns there. Haven't received any of those requests. The deed does refer to it as Peter Kerr. And then this is the operate the island as a public park in a manner consistent with the Metro Regional Natural Area. So this is where we're getting a little bit of the tricky stuff. So Spring Park is managed that way, and that is an NCPRD manages it. So I would say, NCPRD's not here, but the work that Tanya does is consistent with what you would do in a natural area. That's what she does. And Peter may be able to speak to the way in which we operate there as well. But I would say that's an ongoing issue. It's something when issues are brought to our attention, if we're not meeting that need, that would be really helpful to know. And maybe that's some of what we'll hear, but that is the intention. I think the crux of Elk Rock Island is you have a parks district who doesn't have it in their contract to cover it, and a city that doesn't have a parks district. So we've been doing the best we can. I would argue we are meeting the terms of our agreement. Is that enough? That is certainly, up for the public to tell us, right? And so I just want everyone to, I'm going to stop sharing this for just a second and let y'all ask me any questions. But I think this is sort of the state of play in terms of at least the IGA and the reporting requirements. Does that make sense? Does the way I talk about it make sense? Okay. Peter, do you have anything you'd like to correct about any of that?
No, I think it was pretty accurate. I think I would the only feedback that I got from the first report was thanks for submitting the report. So we haven't received much feedback from Portland on our reports.
So I'm a little surprised to learn that this did not get rolled into our IGA with NCPRD, because I was under the impression that was in process, like
a long time ago. Yeah. So here's what I think happened, and you can hear from others. But so when I got here, it was like, okay, do we need this IGA? And Peter was relatively new and had additional capabilities, and I was like, well, I don't know. Can you do it? What do we need to do? He looked at the report. He's like, I think maybe we could do this. Let's take a look. We were working through it. What we didn't realize at the time is there had been some negotiations that had been going on between Mitch and NCPRD before that. So we moved ahead. We were thinking we were kind of on our own. Like, it's not in an agreement. We don't know, but a draft agreement. We got to kind of just get it done. Did that year one, and then we heard from NCPRD. They're like, no, we know how to do this. This is a natural area. We manage it we don't manage it, but it's like Spring Park. We've been, if you're talking about staff resources, we have staff that kind of do this kind of thing. And I heard that as, oh, you got it? Great. You got it from here. You're going to do that. And somewhere around the course of me understanding and working down here, I learned that was not the case. It was not clear, and we need to have an agreement. We are working on an update to the master IGA, and I have said we have to figure this out. This has to be known. The roles and responsibilities for this island have to be clear. We can't do this anymore. We were in a position, honestly, I was about to bring you a standalone agreement 6 months ago for federal disaster assistance, because without it, I couldn't even pass through resources from FEMA. I could apply for disaster resources, but I couldn't give them to the district. So we need it addressed. If they're going to do work there, we need it. But at this point, it's not on track for a standalone agreement, because I have asked if they want to bring that back. I don't necessarily have an answer back on that part yet. We are working on a master IGA amendment, which would include this property and all of our properties, which probably is the right way to go. That's still 6 or 7 months out in terms of getting it completed. So that's where we are. I think in some ways it's suffered a little bit in transition between staff. It suffered a little bit, I think, just in terms of, I don't know if it was a miscommunication or a misunderstanding between the two entities, but that's where the agreement is at this point in time, to the best of my knowledge.
So can I I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
There were conversations and some negotiation did take place around having some sort of IGA between the city and NCPRD for Elk Rock Island.
Yes.
And some other things happened, some other conversations occurred, and it was set aside. And now your goal is to get it incorporated into the master IGA. Is that correct?
Yes.
Summary?
Or if we need a standalone, or are we going to do it ourselves? I just want it to be, I just want it to be so clear, like painfully, unambiguously clear. Cause this is where I kind of understand where the community is coming from a little bit. Cause it's like, we're Clark Kent and Superman, like you can't get us in the room at the same time. And I'm sorry, I guess this is my blanket apology to community members who are having that experience. And I know that Peter's on the same page, and Peter's now jumping in to work on parks, which I think is a real opportunity. And I'm so happy that he's here and that I really am. And not just because this is hard, but because I think he's bringing some skills to the table and some resources and expertise to the table that I don't have, and I haven't had, that may not have been serving this conversation very well. So we were just talking earlier today. It's like, whatever it is, time's up. Like we have to have it. We have to know what it is. And in the interim, we've been doing what we can. It's not like nothing's been happening. Stewardship has been happening. And I think a lot of that stewardship, I do want to thank the volunteers that go out. They've done a lot of really great work, right? And Tanya's done a lot of really great work. Julian and Galen did a lot of great work. So I hope that at least folks can hear that part, that I'm acknowledging this intergovernmental quagmire situation, which I agree needs to be resolved. But the love and the passion for it actually has been resulting in effort being placed there, even throughout this time as well. So that was so long, Mayor. I didn't even think I answered your question. Do you want to try it again? Should I try it again?
No, you answered it.
Okay.
You answered it. It's, I'm a little surprised that NCPRD at some point didn't go, we were in negotiation on this thing and all of a sudden it went away.
They did. They did. And they said, and I said, oh, but I thought you said you could do it. So I think there was just a disagreement when it went to, okay, it sounded like the city could handle it in-house. And then Inspirator was like, well, we could handle it in-house. And then I thought, oh, you got it. And that's where that stopped. So that's Anne's gonna clean up my mess.
No, I'm not cleaning up the mess. I'm probably making it worse.
Yeah.
But the IGA, Kelly has sent multiple emails asking where we're at on this IGA. And I think she's also just we're not upset about it, but I do think she's tried multiple times to pick this up. And because there's a lot of things going on for both agencies, it just hasn't been the priority in the moment in time when it's happening. So she needs a little more credit than she's giving herself at the moment. I think she has tried multiple times to figure this out. Simultaneously, I think that you also are working with an agency right now that is trying to do a lot of things, both inside and outside of our organization. They stepped in during a fire and helped and brought in fencing, and we did all these things together. So it has not stopped the partnership. but the paperwork has definitely been more of an issue. And, you know, we're now at this point where she is restarting the IGA discussions for the master IGA. So do we keep going down this path and trying to clean this up when we're actually now going down this path and? I think that's pretty much the perfect description of the last 4 years. I wish that there was ever a clean moment where we said, this is the perfect moment, but it was always one where things came up. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? You know, I mean, you mentioned everything that's been going on, and I just wonder, you know, what role, if any, I mean, obviously the Parks District's been dealing with, you know, huge litigation with Happy Valley and the sort of there was not a district advisory board for a very long time. I mean, I'm not even sure that even if we had great IGA revision language, I don't know that we would be in any closer to a position today than we are right now, right? Or am I off base in thinking that those two things are also
very fair? They also have been without an executive director now for the last many months. So this is, and when I say many, I mean more than 6, I believe. So this is not something that has been short-term. The team has been doing a yeoman's job of trying to hold everything up. So this is not me saying that the team at NCPRD hasn't tried really hard. They have, they've been great. But yeah, there's a lot of things that played into this. And I think within 1 year of us taking ownership, they were in litigation.
I do just want to say we would still have to, Peter, I think maybe he's going to say this, but even if so choose your own adventure, even if we decided tomorrow we pick back up the draft, there's a draft IGA just for Elk Rock Island. We want to get that in place. We want to move it ahead, like marching alongside the master IG update. We would still have to do the math. I still need to know what the services are, what you're planning to charge for them, and how that would compare with Peter having crews, right? And so that's where I'm just really excited that Peter's here, because I think that actually is what kind of happened at that moment. Is we were like, okay, well, if we're gonna pay 32, do we think we can get more? How do we get the most out of our 32, right? And so I think that I'm just going to let you know that that's another evaluation that the city is going to have to do, but I would love it to be in a constructive, linear conversation.
That also was a one-time budget. So the city did not ever have a long-term solution for managing the park. We did not come up with a revenue stream to pay for this or any other park services, nor do we collect any revenue because we are not a parks district for park maintenance. So this is a bigger problem than just Elk Rock. This is a bigger problem than, and it's a problem because NCPRD also, in my own mind, doesn't collect sufficient revenue to maintain the parks at the level that's expected by our community. So, this is actually just a perfect example of some of the struggles that I think both agencies have felt over the last several years.
I was just going to add that when the work plan that we developed that Portland approved to accomplish the goals in the management plan, you know, that was shared with NCPRD when we made this transition, and they were in agreement. They were going to take care of those and follow that initial work plan and develop future work plans for each year. But Ann and Kelly stole all the other things that I was going to say. So,
okay, I want to make sure I get to other questions. So I'll stop. Anything else?
And Galen is he's our newest natural resource technician, and he's got actually a background in education and parks and natural resources. So.
Oh, the only other thing I should add, so you may get questions. We did the demonstration project last year with the parking lot. I think you all know we're not doing that this year. And there's still a lot of people and parking issues and some kind of ongoing kind of signage needs and informational needs about that parking lot's not for the park anymore. So you may hear more about that part as well from some of the folks that are commenting tonight. So just a heads up on that front.
We did get a letter or we got copied on a letter about that. And I wondered, and we'd heard some complaints a month ago when, like the first really nice weekend, when cars were being towed right after, I guess, the work crew for 22nd and River decamped from that lot, and then people started parking there and were being towed. Do you think the signage issue is adequate now?
So Peter Passarelli is being amazing. And I also have to give a shout out to Debbie Espliner and her family for letting us use it in the first place and the original partnership. But we are adding some signs onto the parking lot to make it more clear, just to say this is no longer a part of this project and you will be towed. So that's the first piece. The second piece is, I guess we're also going to do a social media piece on this, just to make sure that we're getting it out far and wide. And if you do have places where it'd be appropriate to share that post, I would ask that you do it. The Esplinars really have tried to be amazing throughout all of this, but there's a point where they can't just keep maintaining, honestly, the trash that was collecting on the site. So that's part of why they're having it towed, is because it wasn't well cared for when people were using it.
I also wanted to let council know, because I don't think it has percolated this far, that tomorrow at the Island Station NDA meeting, there will be a first discussion, I believe, of whether or not the neighborhood might want to consider adopting parking permits and having time limits on parking in the area adjacent to the park. So that's just another moving piece in this super complex scenario. But I did want you to be aware of it, because that would be something that would be initiated by the neighborhood, and then there would be an ongoing conversation. I think it would come to us at some point. Isn't that right, Anne? But just be aware that.
Yeah. So the way this works is that they would go, whoever's the leader of the discussion would take a petition around to the neighborhood and ask for signatures. There are certain stipulations to cross the threshold to be able to come then to the city and ask for a city partnership on it. But the city also reserves the right to reject the plan if we don't have sufficient revenue coming in order to cover the cost of the programming. So there's some pros and cons associated with doing this. And at this point, we're open to the possibility of talking to the community on this.
All right. Shall we take a break from our conversation and hear what the community has to say? How do you want to, is Mart still on? I don't see him on the list anymore.
I see Mart there.
Okay.
I'll allow him to talk. I know for sure, sorry, Mr. I know for sure that Mart wants to talk, and then Alexis, and then we'll see who raises their hand.
All right.
Mart, you might have to unmute.
Did that work?
There you go.
Are we on?
You're on.
Oh, for the record, this is Mark Hughes, and I'd like to thank the council for taking the time to hear my remarks today. I'll try to keep it brief, but succinct. I think I need to warn you that I have a color to my thoughts as based on my experience, both with the city of Milwaukie, Elk Rock Island, and with Portland Parks. I have been past chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for 10 years. I served on the North Clackamas Park and Rec District Advisory Board for a number of years during that period of time. I helped start the Friends of Elk Rock Island and Spring Park some 40 years ago, and it's seen its own life and cycle. And most recently, I worked for Portland Parks and Recreation between 2000 and 2016 as park ecologist involved in restoration, invasive weed control, And most importantly, I worked under a paradigm called ecosystem management. You're familiar with ecosystem management. For your reference, it's outlined in Exhibit B in the IGA. And I'd like to structure my remarks around the points of ecosystem management. My experience and of ecosystem management tells me that has not been done in Elk Rock Island. And I'd like to sketch that out and explain why. The reports that have been forthcoming, I would characterize as reactionary, feel good, and confusing. The system that the city of Milwaukie put together is not based on the ecosystem management criteria, but on some goals that the 2016 plan outlined as ways of getting to ecosystem management. Basically, my reading of the documents is that insufficient monies have been spent, and those monies that have been spent on the management island basically are for trash cleanup and trail maintenance. There is staff time, but most of it is administrative, and very little of it is actually work that has been occurring on the island that would benefit the management of the island itself. The exception to that may be this last year with the fire, but I think the fire outlines a reason why there needs to be a more comprehensive approach to the management of the resources. The fire actually sets a situation up where some very positive restoration can occur and continue the work that Portland Parks and Recreation undertook in the early 2000s. First off, I'd like to talk about the ecosystem management criteria points. The first one is an inventory. This requires a biological assessment of the various habitats on the island to identify the resources that are needed or should be there and that require some management activities. There is a type of management in the IGA and the management plan that the city of Portland brought forward, and it talked about the vegetative communities. But what is lacking is that there is no detail about what needs to be managed. I have to digress a little bit and say that Elk Rock Island has a number of very unique plant species and maybe some important biological type specimens. These are not identified, and if you do not inventory those resources, then you're unable to develop a management plan to protect those resources. So we've got a situation where the management plan from Portland Parks identified the resources at a gross level, but the inventory requires a much finer level of detail and understanding in order to then leverage the rest of the management paradigm. The next bullet is a desired future condition. And this is a concept that the manager sit down and says, what should this be managed for? You know, water quality is one of those things. You can talk about that, but specific birds might be. To give you an example, there's a peregrine falcon not nesting on Elk Rock Island, but the cliff across the way. But from Portland's point of view in the management plan, that would be a identifiable resource that required management. But I use that only as an example because it's not on Elk Rock Island itself. Since we have no inventory, we can't do the desired future condition. There needs to be an assessment. And that's where a ecologist, a botanist, a resource manager, technician. Yes.
It's been 5 minutes, Mr. Mayor. Just
didn't know
it has, and I'm aware of that. But given the situation that we've had over the last 4 years, given Mark's level of expertise, both broadly speaking and specifically to this property, I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There needs to be an assessment to understand what's there, and a gap analysis is another term for it, is what's there, what isn't there, and what needs to be done to achieve the desired future condition. There needs to be a prescription. And this is where is derived from the assessment, is where the managers say, these are the things, the activities, the field work that needs to be done to achieve the desired future condition. There's the intervention, i.e. we go out and do the field work. We do the planting, we do the invasive removal, or we take steps to reduce the social impacts of the site. And then there needs to be monitoring. You know, you go back out to the site and say, did we accomplish what we intended to? It is an adaptive management paradigm, and we start all over again. And so we continue to fine tune the management. For these reasons, I can clearly say that the city of Milwaukie has not implemented the ecosystem management in the IGA because we have none of the points that define ecosystem management. What we have is, this is what the money we spent. This is the volunteers we did. We did an ivy pull. There is no plan on the overall long-term management of the natural resources of the site. There is only reaction to what happens. Now, your discussion has told me that you're keying in on the key points that need to happen here. However, because of the resources, I have to come to the council tonight and ask for something that I know Milwaukie can do. It would be a positive step for both the citizens and the city, is I think, and I'm recommending that you establish an advisory committee to be able to implement the IGA and the ecosystem management that is agreed to. I know that there's the expertise in the city. I know of a number of people that understand these issues and know how to advise to get these things to happen. I'd also like to say the reality of the situation, it's going to cost some money. And I'm going to disagree about the money that the city has spent. I did an open information request from the city. I was told that the money had been appropriated. I asked to see the budget and how that money was spent. I was told that that was not available. In other words, I have no proof that the city ever spent any money implementing the IGA. I know that the Park District is not capable of implementing the ecosystem management. You've outlined those reasons tonight in your discussion, and working on the Park Board, Advisory Board for the number of years I did, I know that the Park District does not have the resources to manage this resource site in the way that the IGA requests. For that reason, what I think is needed is a group within the city to advise the city, work with the city to develop a plan and a work plan to be able to meet the management needs of the island. As a park employee with the city of Portland, it was my job to inventory sites to implement the day-to-day management activities of the sites that I manage. I manage about 1,400 acres of natural resource sites in Southeast Portland. And I did that with a crew, and we worked, we did invasive removal, we did restoration planning, we brought in community volunteers, and we were able to make progress. It didn't happen at once, but it's a small stepwise. And I think Elk Rock Island needs to continue to receive that type of resources. I didn't manage Elk Rock Island, Mark Wilson did, who was my cohort at Portland Parks. And I know that Portland Parks did a lot of important, valuable work on the island. My evaluation since the city of Milwaukie is taking ownership is that work is degrading, and I'd like to see that turn around. So tonight I'm asking you to work with the friends, other interested community people, ask them to advise you on how best to implement this IGA. That's what I wanted to bring to you tonight. If you have questions, I'm certainly willing to respond to those.
So I do have a question. You know, I spend a fair amount of time out there, and my view of the worst thing that's happening to the island is that it's being loved to death. There's more people out there over the last, not counting the fire, post-fire period, but leading up to the post-fire period, there have been more people out there over the last maybe 3 years than I had ever seen out there before. And you said something about some social something or other that sort of indicated a way to control that. And I'm unaware of any kind of way to control how many people go into a park. What specifically are you suggesting?
That's something that can be addressed within ecosystem management. If that's an impact and if that's damaging resources, I can give you an example of that. There's a micranthus growing on the rocks by one of the trails that lead from the basalt floodplain up to the oak woodland. Actually, it's doing pretty good. I first identified it 40 years ago, and I went back, I was looking for it, and I found it, and it's actually increased in population, in size and area that's covered. But it's a very uncommon plant, but that one should look at that and say, is it possible that this can be damaged by people widening the trail and things like that? So you might have to do an educational thing around that plant. You might want to relocate trails. The educational things are needed, but they have to be specific to the particular resource. I know there's trails that are, Portland Parks went in and redeveloped a trail system to try to cut down on the number of trails. But there's desired trails where people start making their own trails. And when those happen, you need to intervene, do some management activities, and figure out the specifics, what needs to be done to protect the resources in that particular location. There's other large scale things that could be done. You can restrict parking. You know, if people are driving in and looking for a place to park in the neighborhood, well, you know, there's a conflict here between people in the neighborhood parking and so restricting the parking may be one of those options. So I think that what I'm trying to say, there's a level of different kinds of activities that one can do. They are specific to the resource you're trying to protect. They are somewhat scale dependent. But you need to have a process to be able to identify those impacts and have a way to determine how you're going to approach management of it, and to see if that management activity is actually working on it. So it could be through education, or it could be through structural means in terms of restricting the number of people. If it's just a walk-in site from the neighborhood, it's going to get different usage than if it's a drive-in site for people that want to go down to the river from, Salem, or wherever else they're coming from. So I think that what I'm suggesting is a process to be able to address these things rather than specific solutions. But I think that there are solutions.
Okay, thanks. I have one more question, then I want to go to another speaker as quickly as we can. Given the cuts that Portland Parks has taken over the last, what's it been, 2 years? I've lost track of time. COVID has ruined all sense of time for me. But fairly recently, Portland has taken big cuts to the Parks District. Do you imagine that Elk Rock Island would have been continuing to get the level of care it was getting in the early 2000s?
I retired before bad things started happening with Portland Parks. But I could see a change in the park system, and that's actually a social thing, and that's to be expected. I think that what the key and important thing here is that we have a base of community support that values these things. And if you have a cadre of citizens who want to support natural resource sites, it becomes easier for the jurisdictions to do. That's a serious problem. It's a human's problem. We know that there's a lot of concern because of global warming, fires. If we're concerned about fire, part of this thing should be maybe a fire management plan, i.e. some controlled burns. We did controlled burns on Powell Butte for this very reason. A properly vegetated forest community is far less susceptible to fire than one that is allowed to be overgrown with invasive weeds. So it's in our best interest to be able to manage these properly. And that's what I'm advocating, is that we love these sites, and we're willing to take care of them, and we are willing to develop the community support that values them.
Okay, thanks, Mart. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. I very appreciated the opportunity to speak on this.
Alexis. You are unmuted.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, good. I had to switch my microphone settings. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you all for your time. So I'm wearing the hat tonight of being the chair of the Friends of Elk Rock Island and Spring Park. And I know we're past schedule, so I'm gonna really keep it pretty brief here. This has been really, really helpful for me. Reviewing the packet and listening to the conversation has helped make some things clear that weren't ahead of time. And one of those things specifically was the question that the group has brought up pre-fire and pre-COVID around the designation of the island as a natural area and what sort of, what the implications are on the island's management based on that designation. And we didn't really know where that designation was lying and how that would affect the management itself. So it was helpful for me to see the Metro designation on there, and I was poking around on Metro's website, reading more about it. And they have a regional natural area, which is what Elk Rock Island, per the IGA, is supposed to be managed according to. They also have regional nature park and regional recreation area. And
Alexis, you're fading in and out a little bit, so if you could hold the microphone steady next to your mouth, that would really help.
I am so sorry. This has been an ongoing microphone thing since I got this brand new laptop. So it just dips in and out and there's nothing I can do, unfortunately.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. So basically on Metro's website, the natural area is indicates that the management activities are specifically just for the fish and wildlife and water and air quality. And then you get to the sort of middle rating of nature park, which talks about, you know, providing recreation and educational opportunities, and then all the way down to recreation area, which speaks a little bit more about human use. And so what I'm wondering is if this natural area designation is something that we need to look a little bit more closely at and see if that actually is practical for the island. This is like my super preliminary thought as I've been learning this as we've been going, because frankly, what we have is a really, really challenging situation for management, which was made super clear during the fires when we were trying to reduce people visiting the island. But we have an area that is used for recreation that has sensitive plants and animals, and it's in the floodplain. So doing anything in the floodplain is really difficult, and it can be accessed by boat and by foot and by car and so on. And so I want to recognize that the challenges here are really unique, and we haven't been able to find an example elsewhere of how they've managed to reduce a park being loved to death with those unique things combined, right? And so based on my input from the group, right, which I only started chairing a couple of years ago, you know, we do tabling at the island, especially in the summertime, that we're already planning on stepping up this year, as well as participating in those volunteer events and things like that. And really what I've heard from the Friends of Elk Rock Island and Spring Park is this concern about protecting this natural area as a resource, you know, for generations to come. And so what I'm seeing is if IGA things are going to be in development, that I think the Friends would be interested in participating there somehow and supporting the process, right? And just finding some sort of way to facilitate collaboration between the city and NCPRD so that the management plan that we have is something that's realistic and something that can be implemented. And again, you know, adaptive management strategies where we learn and we shift and we move forward and try new things is definitely going to be a part of it. So I'm already rambling. I just wanted to say, you know, that this has been really, really helpful to read and review and listen. And I think, again, from the group that the human element is something that isn't necessarily reflected in the management plans as is, right? Those desired future conditions are speaking to like specific ecological plant communities without taking into account, as you said, Mayor Mark, the last couple of years where the island use has increased so much. And so I think that's what the Friends have been noticing as something that we need to be looking to. So on behalf of the Friends, so to say, you know, I'm just wanting to express that support and interest in this process that I recognize as being really complicated. So thank you so much.
Thank you. If you could send either Scott or me your contact information, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that's wanting to speak?
I don't see any other hands raised or chats. Let me double check the email. I don't see any. I don't see email. All right. Anybody, does anybody else want to speak? Raise your hand, make a comment.
Peter Passarelli raised his hand.
Oh, Peter.
Peter.
I did not have anything.
I see a hand. Okay. Oh, that's weird. Okay. All right. Well, clearly we have things to do on this. A ball was dropped that I was unaware of several years ago, really. And I'm intrigued a little bit that the idea of potentially not just handing this off to NCPRD is a possibility. So I am interested in further, less formal conversations with staff and Ferry Spark and Mart to talk about what the possibilities are moving forward. it's very interesting to me that Portland has apparently given its blessing to what we have done, because I can tell you during the negotiations, I was convinced that they were going to look for any opportunity whatsoever to submarine this. So either we're doing better than we think we're doing, or staff changed there too. And that ball got dropped. I don't know. But I can tell you, sitting through those negotiations, staff was very unhappy with this transaction. Portland staff, sorry, to be very specific. So I don't know that we can realistically pass this resolution tonight. I mean, it feels like there's work that needs to be done, at least some conversations that need to be had, to me, before we can, in all honesty, move forward.
It's totally up to you all. I mean, I think the main purpose of tonight, the adoption of the work plan and the report has been pretty perfunctory. And like I said, it's already gone over to Portland Parks and Rec, and I don't expect to hear from them about it. So that is still the plan that can be conducted with the resources that we have. So I think if you want to talk more with staff about that, we can before you adopt it. But absent, I mean, we have some definite, the funding issue would play pretty heavily into what changes you think you'd like to see made to the proposed work plan. And there's nothing that changes about what happened last. I mean, that's all same. So it would just be about the year ahead. And so we could certainly talk. Again, there's actually, I don't think they know when I send it and when I don't send it. And I've already sent it to them. So if you want to wait and we can bring it, we could even bring it back later and pass it as we normally did. The most important thing for me tonight, which you all did, and I thank you for, is I just wanted everyone who had questions about the island and what has or hasn't happened to kind of be able to hear it all in one place in a public space. And that's what you provided tonight. So that was my main goal. You did it. If you want to hold on actually adopting the resolution because you want to talk more, that's fine. I would just caution that you probably can't make a ton of changes to a proposed work plan with no budget.
I would also just add that budget on this one includes staffing.
Okay. Council, any other thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure where money is going to come from to do anything different. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like it affects anything to hold on adopting the resolution from staff's perspective, but I'm.
Yeah, but I think I'd like
to park. That's kind of our big thing on parks right now. So, yeah.
And I guess I'd like some clarity about what's going to change between now and the next conversation. I don't have capacity, and we don't run parks. So I'm happy to come back and have a conversation with council. If you all would like to have conversations out in the community and you'd like to come back to us and help us understand what projects you'd like us to give up in order to fund this, or a funding mechanism to cover the cost of running this park and other parks, because this isn't the only place where we're having this discussion. Realistically, NCPRD is our parks district. And we're probably at least 8 months from having an IGA with them that's the master IGA. And I'm literally in one conversation into that process. So it's hard for me to give you clarity about when we'd even get to the topic of discussing this park in particular, though I'm happy to have that discussion with you all if there are things you'd like to have included in that IGA.
Can I jump in with one potential thing? So the more productive answer I probably should have given is the IGA is staffed. Like we're doing it, we're working on it, we're spending time on it. This topic is a part of it. And I actually really, I mean, Alexa's statements about, well, can we help with that? Like, what are we, kind of what's the potential engagement opportunity with the terms around Elk Rock Island for that? If that's, I mean, as an outlet for now of, we've got staff in rooms talking about this and it touches on this topic. And so I think for me, and I'd have to get Peter's blessing, but it's just how do we solicit and engage with the community as we participate in that project based on what we just heard tonight? I think is a tangible outcome for me. What I can't do is take the work plan and say, okay, I'm going to add, 10 more signs for wayfinding, or I'm going to be able to put this protection in place for this, plant species right here to make sure we keep people off the rocks over here to protect this particular. I can't, those kind of changes. I think we probably, I can ask Peter, we can go back, I can huddle with Peter and see what he thinks. And then kind of maybe Mark, just follow up with you. But even if you pass the resolution tonight, I think we could, that was valuable feedback and input, I think, for both Peter and I to hear heading into those negotiations about that informs them. Do you know what I mean? So I think that is a tangible outcome from tonight, I guess.
So for my desire for a next step is to have at a table, in reality, the chair of Ferry Spark, Mark Hughes, you, Peter, and Tanya, and myself to sit down, because we've got a lot of this. Oh, I thought they were doing it. They thought we, and that. And so clearly that needs to come to a screeching halt, which is what the point of the IGA is. But we don't even know in this 4 years or however, whatever the intervening time is that's happened, because I had been told everything was a go, everything was happening by Mitch. Mitch said it's all but done. That's what I was told. Money's going to NCPRD. And I did not question any further.
So I know I have a couple of concerns at this point. So first and foremost, Kelly Brooks is currently the acting community development director. So I can't actually sign her up to be in another discussion right now. The second piece of this is if I'm negotiating, I'm actually negotiating with the head of NCPRD, who does not exist today.
Exactly, and would be utterly clueless about the unique environment that this island is. So I want us to be the knowledgeable people in that room when that's happening. And right now we aren't the knowledgeable people in that room.
No, we actually have a disagreement with a community member, Mark. I think Kelly actually does feel that we've hit the $40,000, and she's been clear about how we did that. And we have actually provided that direction to Portland Parks. And Portland Parks has not told us we didn't. And the agreement is with Portland Parks. So I understand that you may want to put more money towards it. And if you all would like to put more money towards this park, I support that. But we do not have a funding mechanism to fund parks in the city of Milwaukie. If we want to have a discussion about funding parks in the city of Milwaukie, that's great. But we don't have one today. So I think what I heard tonight is that there is an ecosystem plan that we have a community member who would recommend that we spend a lot of time doing, and a significant resource. And what I'm hearing Kelly Brooks say is that we can take that into the meeting, into the negotiations on the IGA. But if the city's not paying for it, then I'm going to also have to have a discussion with NCPRD about whether or not they have the resources to be able to provide that level of service. This was not a part of the 52 cents that they originally had approved. And so they're in the same bind, which is we keep adding things to their portfolio and asking them to do more, and they don't have additional resource. And I've had many conversations about trying to get them additional resource, but they don't have additional resource. I don't have additional resource because I'm also we're not in the parks. We're not in the parks business.
But we're talking about getting into the parks business. So this is a pretty opportune time to be thinking about this. Are we not? Are we about to build 2 parks of our own?
Well, so we are about to build 3 parks of our own, but those are also parts of the discussion that we are having with NCPRD as a part of the IGA. Now, if the council would like to have a discussion that carves the parks out and has us taking leadership roles around the finances of parks, my conversation here dramatically changes. If we are talking about funding this and going out and having a funding discussion, I'm actually, then I have staff and resources to be able to do far more on this site. I don't think staff has any concerns about doing work on this site. Staff has concerns about doing it without funding and resources dedicated to this process. And I'm trying to be transparent about how much work and time and effort goes into doing the kind of work we're talking about. And right now, we haven't put anything towards that in our budget in years. And technically, we've never, when I had this conversation with Mitch, because I was here, I was actually exceptionally clear that I could only do that for 1 year. And his answer was, well, then it's going to go to NCPRD. So I don't have a solution here with a funding structure today.
Lisa.
I guess, this is all pointing to a conversation we've known we need to have about parks funding generally. And, when the NCPRD effort to increase parks funding failed in 2014, it just kind of fell off the radar screen, and it's been lurking out there, and we need to have it. I don't, I accept Kelly's saying that we've met our obligation, and the fact that Portland hasn't complained maybe means we've met our obligation. That doesn't mean we're doing right by Elk Rock Island. And I do think we need to look for ways to, do better maintenance. Portland did do prescribed burns. So I will say, sort of as context for people who don't know this, I was chair of the neighborhood from 2003 to 2013, not every year, but because I kind of switched off with a couple of other people and would be different officers, but I was involved in the neighborhood governance for that decade. I was closely involved with Mart, worked with Mart in Spring Park. I remember being out there with him, chopping down laurel and spraying reed canary grass and all kinds of stuff before NCPRD ever engaged in Spring Park. So, I have a lot of respect for Mart and his expertise and his experience. I think Portland did do prescribed burns on 2 different occasions that I'm aware of. Portland also did that oak release project where they cut a bunch of Doug fir to make for healthier oak habitat. So Portland, I wouldn't say Portland spent that kind of resources every year, but Portland did do, over the course of a decade, several big projects out there. I do accept Mart's view that we've lost momentum on the natural area. That said, we are in a financial, conundrum because we don't have it in our budget and NCPRD doesn't have it in their budget. But I think that is something we need to discuss as a council when it comes to council goals. And, bigger than, and it's not just Elk Rock Island. It's all of our parks, but yeah.
Yeah, Angel.
So I'm just, I guess maybe this idea of having this, table, I don't know if this is still on the table, a table full of folks who are, have an interest in this area. I guess I'm remembering a conversation we had with Michael Karnosh, the Ceded Lands program at the tribes, the Grand Ron, and the conversation we had with him about specific the types of unique native plants that live on the island and in the just in the area generally. And I'm getting a little bit uncomfortable with the idea that if we're having this broad conversation about this place as a natural resource that they're not at the table, like literally. And so I just wanted to, at this, since we're all here talking about this, before we get too far down any road, we've got this IGA with Portland that we've got to adhere to until 2025. I'd like us to be considering, I'd like us to be really thinking hard about whether or not we're the best stewards of this land long-term. And so anything that we do when we're having these conversations with our regional partners, like the Parks District and even, within the neighborhood, I suppose I would like us to sort of maybe just take a step, big picture, and think about, who should be telling us, who should be telling who how to manage this natural resource. I'm not sure that everybody who really has, a vested interest is here at the table tonight.
And I think that's an awesome suggestion, and I'd love somebody from the tribe to be at that table. Kathy.
So I don't want to go down the road of telling staff how to fix this problem. And I kind of hear that in this description of a table where a bunch of people sit down and talk to each other. Staff has talked to all of these people. I've been in conversations with these people repeatedly. It's not for lack of conversation that we're in the place we're in right now, I don't believe. And that is not me saying that that community engagement isn't important. It is very important and it is valuable. And we do need to engage with everyone who has an interest in that park and in that place. And that does include potentially the tribes. It does include potentially the people who go out there for recreation who don't have any idea what a natural area is. It includes our communities of color who use that park, anecdotally anyway, pretty extensively. So my feeling is that the direction I would want to provide to staff around this is that, yes, we see that there's a problem here and we want some community engagement around this as you're thinking about the IGA. And let's be open to possible questions about ownership if the tribes are interested in that. That's, are we the right stewards for this? I think that's a great question to ask. But I don't want to dictate to staff how we do that work because I'm not a community engagements expert, and we have those experts on our staff.
Well, I feel a particular responsibility to this island that I'm going to take some ownership in, that I didn't follow through and ask for more information about what the agreement was and who was doing what and what the plans were or anything else. I trusted staff, as you say. And I negotiated this park coming into the city of Milwaukie. So that's why I feel a particular level of responsibility for that island. I will be having a meeting with whatever group of people I can pull together. If no staff from Milwaukie comes to it, so be it. Then things will work out differently than they probably would have. But I intend to have this meeting, and I would love somebody from the tribe. So Angel, if you have a particular contact there that you think's the right person, please connect me. So I will be moving forward with this one way or the other. Kathy?
I heard in what you said something that implied that staff had not been straight with you, and maybe I misheard you. I have been following this issue closely for years before I was on council, and I will tell you that staff have always been transparent. It is a confusing and difficult situation, but I do not feel that staff has ever misled me as a resident or as a member of council on the complexity and nuance of this situation.
I probably should be more specific. Mitch clearly misled me. I'm not blaming Kelly, I'm not blaming Peter, I'm not blaming Ann. I understood that this was dealt with. I understood that we had an agreement with the Parks District, and that they understood what was required to move forward according to the IGA, and that they were going to do it, and that the money that we were theoretically straight up giving them, $32,000, was going to take care of it for the first year, and they were solving it after that. That was my understanding. This is the first time I've heard otherwise. So, for whatever that's worth. In any case, we can have a further discussion offline about who will or won't be at the table, but I will be moving forward with the meeting. Is there anything else from anybody else? Okay. Then we will come back to the resolution when we know more about what we are resolved to do. Legislative and regional policy issues.
Me again.
Like I said.
That's why I have lots of time to go to the Elk Rock meeting. I'm just kidding. I don't have a presentation for this item. The only thing I pegged on the little bulletin board of, and unlike other weeks, I didn't ping you guys to see if you had letters or legislative issues that you wanted to raise. So that's my first question. Do any of you have items that you want to talk about tonight?
No.
Okay. So my main one is money. And if anyone, I can reach out to, here's what I'll do. I'd like to just talk to Senator Taylor's office, is the one that actually submitted the lottery bond request, and just get a status check. That bill pops out and I'm so far out of the loop. I am feeling a little tenuous about how realistic that is. And if it's not realistic, we need to know. I also know that I'm pretty sure it can't be realistic without some lobbying. So this is me saying I can do a status check, but would any of you be willing to make some follow-up calls to whoever I find out are kind of the right, I'm assuming, I think it usually goes to it goes to Ways and Means. So I think it would be maybe making some calls to Ways and Means members, depending on where I can sort out that it's sitting at this moment in time. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah. Now, please, once you have some concept on the status, and please do reach out. So I do have some contacts on Ways and Means.
Yeah. So that's that. And then if more of Council President Heisey, I think I did just want to say I'm behind on making any additional revisions. There's just so the rest of you know, there's a policy paper that's moving through at JPAC that's so long. It's where everyone kind of puts their hopes and dreams for policy for the federal transportation bill. And Kathy or Councilor Heisey has been reviewing it, and I think I wanted to touch base with you sometime before Thursday, just about what, if anything, you want to do regarding that greenhouse gases section. And just for you all, my summary of where we are is there's good language in there. It's pretty good language. It's just, and this is where Natalie's here. She could say it more eloquently than me. We've kind of lost the people powered part of transportation in the greenhouse section. There's a lot about transit. There's a lot about alternative fuel vehicles and things like that. But sort of the kind of the bike ped message, we were trying to find a way to amplify that a little bit more. So Kathy gave me some good language. I just haven't made a lot of progress there. So it's what, if anything, you want to say on Thursday to that room. So
well, and it's coming up at C4 Metro tomorrow morning. So I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay. Yeah, I think rumble away. I think what I'm hearing is that there's, and probably for good reason, there was this really, really vocal like bike lobby, and then the walkers came in, and that's great too, because the walkers are awesome. But that kind of over time has oddly taken a little bit of a back seat. So we're not hearing as much about bike and ped as we are about transit. Great stuff, all great stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just for a town that wants to build a bunch of bike and ped.
They've been real quiet.
He could plus it up. That would be great. Yeah. So pretty general verbiage things, but it could be helpful. Those are my only 2 items. Anne, did you have anything? Okay.
I think, well, so everyone knows that we submitted, I should be clear, Representative Power and Senator Taylor submitted the request. I have not received an update on the parks funding. So I will keep you all posted as we learn more. The real issue there is just finding out if it qualifies for the funds that the state submitted them for. I know that their commitment to those projects are very real. So I really appreciate that.
All right. Anything else? I think I've kind of worn y'all out today. So if you're done, it's okay.
I don't have anything. Anybody else have anything? Then I would entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second, but I also wanted everybody to tune in to the Clackamas County election results. Early results are showing good things for North Clackamas School District. So,
yay. Good. Thank you, everyone. Good work.
Did we?
Oh, we didn't actually vote, did we? No. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. We are adjourned.